The day my family threw me off the ranch after my mother's funeral, I thought I had lost the last place on earth that still belonged to me. I had one duffel bag, an old truck, and Atlas, the German shepherd who had survived some of the darkest years of my life, beside me. I gave him one simple command: load up. For the first time in 8 years he refused. Instead, he walked toward a forgotten road in the mountains and kept looking back until I followed. Hours later, the road I had planned to take was burning. Strangers were trapped, and beneath that mountain Atlas uncovered a secret my mother had protected for almost 50 years. A secret about a wildfire that was never an accident, and about who I really was. If stories about loyalty, courage, and the extraordinary bond between veterans and their dogs mean something to you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Your support gives us the reason to keep bringing these stories to life. The day my family told me I no longer belonged on the ranch, Atlas did something he had never done in 8 years. He ignored my command. I had told him to load into the truck. He looked at the open passenger door, looked back at me, and then turned away. Not toward the barn, not toward the house. He walked to the old irrigation road that climbed behind the eastern ridge, stopped beneath a dead ponderosa pine, and stared at me as if I were the one who had forgotten my training. At the time, I thought he was being stubborn. By sunset, I understood he was trying to keep me alive. My name is Caleb Rowan. I spent 22 years in the United States Navy, most of them in work I still do not talk about. When people hear the words Navy SEAL, they usually imagine a man who cannot be frightened. That is not how it works. Training does not remove fear. It teaches you what to do while fear is trying to take the steering wheel. I was 48 years old when I came back to Juniper Basin for my mother's funeral. Atlas stayed beside me through all of it. He knew when my breathing changed before I did. He knew when a diesel engine idling too long brought back a road I did not want to remember. He knew that if my right hand began to shake, he needed to press his shoulder against my knee and make me feel the present. At the cemetery, he sat against my leg while they lowered my mother into the ground. I never gave him the command. He just knew. When we reached the ranch after the funeral, there were 2 unfamiliar vehicles parked near the house and a real estate sign lying face down beside the fence. That was the first warning. The second was the padlock on the machine shop. The third was Gavin Pike standing on the porch with a folder tucked under one arm. Gavin was my stepfather's son from his first marriage. He and I had never been brothers in any way that mattered. We had shared holidays, chores, and the same last slice of pie often enough, but we had never shared trust. He was 6 years younger than me, smooth in the way some men become smooth when they discover that calm words can cut deeper than loud ones. His wife, Renee, stood behind him near the screen door. She had already changed out of the black dress she wore to the funeral. That detail stayed with me. Gavin held out the folder. "You should read this before you unload," he said. I did not take it. "What is it?" "The transfer paperwork." "What transfer?" His eyes moved once toward Atlas. The dog was standing at my left side, quiet, ears forward. "The ranch," Gavin said. "Evelyn signed it over last winter." For a moment, the whole basin went silent. No insects, no wind, no distant cattle, just the blood moving through my ears. I looked past him at the house. The curtains my mother had sewn were still hanging in the kitchen windows. Her wind chime turned slowly beside the porch. 3 days earlier, she had been alive in a hospital room 70 miles away, her hands cold and thin beneath mine. She had never said anything about giving away the ranch. Signed it to who? To the family trust. And who controls the trust? Gavin did not answer fast enough. Renee did. "We do." Atlas shifted 1 step forward. I put 2 fingers against his collar. "Stay," he stayed. Gavin finally exited the folder again. "You have been gone a long time, Caleb. There are sentences that sound harmless until you hear what is hiding underneath them." I looked at him. "I came back every time she asked." "That is not what I meant. I know exactly what you meant." His jaw tightened. Renee crossed her arms. "Nobody is questioning your service." I almost laughed. I took the folder and opened it. My mother's signature appeared near the bottom. Evelyn May Rowan. I knew the shape of every letter. Still, something about it bothered me. Not enough to call it false, just enough to make an old instinct lift its head. The final page said the residence and surrounding property were under the control of Pike Family Holdings. I read the line twice, then I closed the folder. When do you want me gone? Gavin looked surprised. Maybe he expected shouting. Maybe Renee did too. Caleb, nobody wants this to become ugly. When? He exhaled. Tonight would be best. The buyers are sending an inspector in the morning. That word hit harder than the rest. I looked toward the north pasture, where my mother had buried 3 horses and a red heeler named Pepper. I looked toward the barn where she once sat on an overturned bucket and stitched my palm after I caught it on barbed wire. I looked toward the upstairs window where, at 19, I had packed a sea bag and told her I was joining the Navy. She had not cried until she thought I could no longer see her. Now the place was being inspected by strangers in the morning. Renee said, "You can take your personal things, my personal things." Her face changed just slightly. She knew how it sounded. I handed the folder back. "I will be out before dark." Gavin nodded. Relief, that was what I saw, not sorrow. Not regret, relief. I walked past them and went inside. The house smelled wrong. That is the simplest way to explain it. Every surface had been wiped down. The family photographs were gone from the hallway. The quilt from the couch was missing. Even the small ceramic rooster my mother hated but refused to throw away had disappeared from the kitchen windowsill. Someone had already begun erasing her. Atlas moved room to room without being told. He did not sniff like a curious dog. He searched like he was working. I followed him into my mother's bedroom. The bed was stripped. The closet was half empty. The dresser drawers stood open. On the floor beside the nightstand sat a cardboard box with my name written across the top in black marker. Inside were a few photographs. My high school wrestling medal, 2 letters I had mailed home from training, and a brown leather Bible with the spine cracked almost in half. Underneath the Bible was my mother's red wool coat. I stopped. She had worn that coat for more than 30 years. I can still see her in it, standing at the end of the driveway during my first Christmas leave. Snow caught in her hair, waving both arms even though I was close enough to see her face. I lifted it from the box. Something knocked softly against the floor. A brass object had fallen from one of the pockets. Atlas reached it before I did. "Leave it." He froze. Then he looked at me. The brass piece was shaped like a key, but not for any lock I recognized. Thick shaft, squared teeth, a small round tag fixed to the ring. Stamped into the metal were 2 words, East Relay. Atlas lowered his nose and inhaled once, then again. His body changed. Any handler who works with a serious dog learns to notice small things. The angle of the neck, the set of the tail, the way the nostrils flare. The moment curiosity becomes scent commitment. Atlas had scent. "From the coat?" I asked. He looked toward the bedroom door. I picked up the key. There was a faint reddish dust caught in the groove near the teeth. Not house dust, volcanic dirt. The eastern ridge was full of it. I slipped the key into my pocket. Behind me, the floor creaked. Gavin stood in the doorway. For the first time all afternoon, he did not look calm. "What did you find?" The question came too quickly. I turned halfway toward him. "Why? Just asking." His eyes dropped to my hand. I closed my fingers around the key. "Mom ever mention an East Relay?" Nothing moved in his face except one muscle near his jaw. "No, think about it." I said no. Atlas stepped between us. Not threatening, simply present. Gavin's eyes stayed on the dog. Renee called from the kitchen, asking if everything was all right. Gavin answered without looking away from me. "Fine." Then he stepped back. I watched him leave. That was the 4th warning. I packed 1 duffel. Most of what I owned was already in my truck. I had never collected much. Men who spend years moving learn to distrust objects they cannot carry. I took the photographs, the Bible, my mother's coat, a change of clothes, a field jacket, a trauma kit, 2 canteens, a headlamp, and the old revolver my mother kept locked in a bedroom safe. I unloaded it, secured the ammunition separately, and put both where they belonged. By the time I carried the duffel outside, the western sky had turned the color of copper. Dry lightning had been forecast farther south, and the wind had been building all day. Not smoke, not yet, hot pine. Dust, the sharp mineral scent that comes before weather changes in dry country. Atlas stood beside the truck. I opened the passenger door. "Load." He looked inside, then at me. "Atlas, load." He did not move. In 8 years together, I could count on one hand the number of times he had refused a direct command, when he was healthy and understood what I wanted. I stepped closer. "What are you doing?" He turned away from the truck and walked toward the irrigation road. "Atlas," he kept going. I followed 10 yards, anger rising faster than it should have. "Stopped." "Good," I pointed back. "Truck." He stared at me. Then he looked uphill. The old road curved behind the barn, crossed a dry wash, and climbed toward the eastern ridge. Nobody used it anymore. The county had abandoned that line after a landslide took out part of the upper grade. Atlas took 3 steps uphill. I felt something cold settle beneath my ribs. Not fear, recognition. The brass key in my pocket suddenly seemed heavier. I looked back toward the house. Gavin had come onto the porch. He was watching us. The moment he realized I had seen him, he lifted one hand as though this were normal, as though he had only stepped outside to say goodbye. I had spent enough years studying men under pressure to know when somebody was pretending not to care where I was going. I turned back to Atlas. "Show me." That was all he needed. He moved. The road climbed steadily through juniper and bitterbrush. Evening light stretched long across the basin behind us. My boots stirred red dust from the old tire ruts. Atlas stayed 20 feet ahead, nose shifting between ground and air. He was not following a single fresh track. He was working an old scent cone. That bothered me even more. My mother's coat had carried something from this direction, and somehow Atlas had found enough of it to connect. We passed the rusted frame of an irrigation pump that had not worked since I was a teenager. We crossed a wash filled with gray stones. Then the land steepened. My breathing changed. I told myself it was the climb. It was not. A low mechanical th came from somewhere beyond the ridge. One beat, then another. My vision narrowed. For half a second, the dry Oregon evening disappeared. The sound became rotor wash, dust became sand, the junipers became broken walls under a white sun. I was 48 years old, and back on a road half a world away with a man named Lewis shouting through the radio that we had 30 seconds. My right hand started shaking. Atlas was beside me before I called him. His shoulder pressed hard against my thigh. I stopped walking. Looked down. Black furs, brown eyes, Oregon. Evening, juniper, Atlas. I put my palm flat against the side of his neck. I know he stayed there. My breathing slowed. The sound came again, clearer this time. A ranch helicopter somewhere west, probably moving equipment or checking fire conditions. Nothing more. Atlas waited until my hand stopped shaking. Then he continued uphill. That is the thing people misunderstand about a good working dog. He did not pity me. He gave me the information I needed. "Here is where you are. Here is what is real. Now move." So I moved. About a mile above the ranch, the abandoned road narrowed against a basalt shelf. Brush had grown across most of it. A fallen pine blocked what remained. Atlas slipped beneath the trunk. I climbed over. On the other side, he stopped so suddenly I almost walked into him. His ears came forward. Nose high, I smelled it too. Metal, faint, old, and something else, cold air. That made no sense. The day had been hot enough to soften the tar on the county road, but a ribbon of cool air touched the sweat along my neck. Atlas stepped off the road. He pushed through a screen of rabbit brush toward a mound of broken rock. At first I saw nothing. Then I noticed the geometry. Nature is full of patterns, but straight lines still betray human hands. 3 stones formed an edge too, even to be accidental. I brushed away dirt, concrete, old concrete poured against the hillside and hidden beneath decades of debris. Atlas began digging near a rusted steel plate. Easy. He slowed but did not stop. I knelt beside him and cleared the dirt with my hands. A recessed handle appeared, then a keyway, square, heavy. My heart began to beat harder. I took out the brass key. It fit. For several seconds I did nothing. Behind me the basin stretched open under the sinking sun. I could see the roof of the ranch far below. From that distance it looked peaceful. Mine almost. Then a gust of wind moved across the ridge. The first smell of smoke came with it, very faint, very far away. But Atlas looked east. Then back at the steel plate. I turned the key. Something released inside the mountain with a deep metallic knock. The hatch moved only an inch before the weight caught. I dug my fingers beneath the edge and pulled. Rust complained. Dirt broke loose. Cool air breathed out of the darkness below. A narrow stairway disappeared into concrete. Atlas put one paw on the first step. Wait. He waited. I switched on my headlamp. The beam reached a landing about 15 feet down. Concrete walls, steel old handrail. This was not a root cellar. This was not a family storm shelter. Somebody had built it to last. I went first. Atlas followed close enough that I could feel his breath against the back of my leg. At the bottom, the stairway turned through a steel door, standing partly open. My light swept across a room no bigger than a two-car garage. A table, 2 cots, shelves, water cans, a cast iron stove with a pipe vanishing into the ceiling. An old radio console occupied the far wall. All knobs, meters, switches, and thick cables. Above it, stenciled in faded black paint, were the same words stamped onto the key. East Relay. I stood very still. The air smelled of dust, dry paper, machine oil, and something that pulled at memory without giving me a name. Atlas moved toward the radio desk. He sniffed the chair, then the floor, then a metal cabinet beside the sole. His tail went rigid. I opened the cabinet. Inside were binders wrapped in waxed cloth. Weather logs, fire maps, county road diagrams, handwritten radio frequencies. The dates began more than 40 years earlier. I pulled out the top binder. A name had been written across the cover, Mara Vale. I did not know anyone named Mara Vale. I opened it. The first pages were ordinary: wind direction, humidity, lightning strikes, notes about gates and dry wells. Then the entries changed, shorter, more personal. Someone had been using the relay for reasons that had nothing to do with weather. I turned another page. A sentence had been underlined twice. If the West Road closes, the basin becomes a chimney. I looked up. The West Road was the only paved road into town. The road I had planned to take. Another page. The county siren cannot be heard beyond Miller Cut in high wind. Do not wait for it. I felt the skin along my arms tighten. Atlas gave a quiet sound behind me. I turned. He was staring at the bottom shelf. There was a small metal cash box pushed against the wall. No lock. I carried it to the table and opened it. Inside were old photographs, a bundle of letters tied with faded blue cord, and one sealed envelope. My name was written across the front, not just Caleb. My full name, Caleb James Rowan. The handwriting was my mother's. I sat down. For a moment I could not touch it. My mother had known about this place. She had carried the key in the red coat. She had left an envelope with my name inside a hidden relay station buried in the eastern ridge. And Gavin had lied when I asked him about it. Atlas came beside me and rested his chin on my knee. I opened the envelope. There was only one page. Caleb, if you are reading this, then I ran out of time before I found the courage to tell you myself. My throat tightened. I kept going. Do not go back to the house tonight. Do not take the West Road if the wind has turned south. Trust the dog. I stopped breathing. Outside, somewhere above several feet of concrete and stone, a low rumble rolled across the ridge. Thunder, or something close to it. Then the old radio on the far wall clicked. Once I stared at it. The console had no visible power. Atlas lifted his head. A second click, then static. Thin, broken, impossible. I stood slowly. A red needle on one of the meters trembled. From the speaker came a voice so weak I almost mistook it for interference. Anyone on East Relay. The message vanished into static. I stepped closer. The voice returned. Fire jumped the county line. My hand tightened on the edge of the desk. Then the final words came through. West Road is blocked. I looked at the letter in my hand. Do not take the West Road. Above us, the wind struck the hillside hard enough to make dust sift from the ceiling. Atlas turned toward the stairway, not frightened, ready. And in that moment, standing inside a place my mother had hidden from me. For most of my life, I understood something that changed the meaning of the entire day. I had thought I had been thrown out of my home. But if Atlas had obeyed me, if I had driven toward town when Gavin told me to leave, I would have taken the West Road. The road that was now burning. I looked down at my mother's unfinished letter. There were more lines beneath the warning, and one name I had never seen before. A name followed by 4 words that made my hands go cold. He knows who you are. He knows who you are. I read those words 3 times. Not because I did not understand them. Because I did. Too well. There are sentences that create questions. That one created a threat. Atlas stood beside me, staring toward the stairwell while the wind hammered the ridge above us. The radio crackled again. East Relay. If anybody is monitoring, respond. I moved to the console. The equipment looked older than I was. Thick switches, dust-clouded meters, a microphone attached by a coiled cord that had gone stiff with age. I picked it up. Nothing happened. I found a power toggle and pushed it. A low hum rose inside the cabinet. Atlas looked at me. So much for no power. A green indicator flickered once, died, then came back weakly. Some kind of battery backup. Maybe solar, maybe something buried farther inside the ridge. I pressed the transmit switch. This is East Relay. Static swallowed my voice. I tried again. East Relay receiving. Identify. For several seconds there was nothing. Then a man answered. East Relay, this is Juniper County Fire Command. Say again. Are you actually transmitting from East Relay? The disbelief in his voice told me something. This place was not merely old. It was supposed to be dead. Affirmative. A pause. Who is this? I looked down at my mother's letter. Caleb Rowan. The static changed, not louder, different. Someone on the other end had stopped moving. Then another voice came over the radio. Older, rough. Caleb? I felt my shoulders tighten. Who is this Ellis Ward? I knew the name. Everybody in Juniper Basin knew Ellis Ward. He had been the county fire chief when I was a teenager. Retired now, supposedly. A tall man with white hair, burned hands, and the habit of showing up at every church breakfast whether he believed in church or not. My mother had trusted him. That memory came fast. Ellis sitting at our kitchen table. My mother pouring coffee, both of them going quiet when I entered. I had been maybe 14. At the time I thought adults simply became boring when children walked into a room. Now I wondered what they had stopped saying. Ellis, I said. His reply came immediately. Listen carefully. Where are you? East Relay, I know that. Are you inside the station? Yes. Another long pause. Then softer. Evelyn got you there. It was not a question. My eyes dropped to the letter again. She left me a key. Ellis exhaled over the radio. It sounded like a man hearing confirmation of something he had feared for years. Then she knew. Knew what? The speaker exploded with interference before he could answer. A burst of voices crossed over one another. Wind warnings. Road closures. A vehicle trapped on Miller Cut. A tanker crew retreating from a crown fire moving northeast. Then the channel cleared. Ellis came back. Caleb, we do not have time for the old story right now. Then give me the short version. The short version is your basin is about to get hit hard. I looked toward the stairwell. How hard? Wind shifted south-southwest 10 minutes ago. Fire crossed Blacktail Creek. It is running through Lodgepole like gasoline. How long? Maybe an hour before it reaches the lower West Ridge. Less if it crowns. My mind began building the terrain automatically. Ranch West Road, Miller Cut, church, old feed store. 24 scattered properties. A small assisted living home near the school. The volunteer fire station. The county road bottleneck. Evacuation already ordered and Ellis did not answer. That was answer enough. People were not getting out. They waited, I said. Some did, some never got the alert. Cellular service is failing. Siren coverage is bad on the east side. I looked at the binder still open on the table, the page I had just read. The county siren cannot be heard beyond Miller Cut in high wind. Do not wait for it. Someone had written that decades ago. Nothing had changed. How many people unknown? Estimate. Maybe 40 still in the basin. My jaw tightened. Vehicles? The west road is blocked by fallen timber and fire. The southern ranch track is impassable for normal vehicles. I closed my eyes for 1 second and pictured the land. There was another way, not a road exactly, a cattle route. Narrow, steep. It crossed the eastern saddle and dropped toward the old quarry. I had ridden it on horseback as a teenager, east saddle. Ellis answered fast. No, it reaches Quarry Road. Not anymore. What happened? Landslide 6 years ago. How bad? Bad enough that the county closed it. Closed does not mean gone. Caleb, can a four-wheel drive vehicle pass? I do not know. Can a man pass silence? Then probably. That was enough. I let go of the transmit switch. Atlas was already watching me. You heard him. His ears lifted. I looked back at my mother's letter. There were still several lines unread. Every part of me wanted to finish it. That is what grief does. It makes the dead feel urgent. But there were living people in the basin. I folded the letter and put it inside my shirt pocket. The truth could wait. Fire would not. I keyed the radio again. Ellis, I am going to check the east saddle. No. You have a better option? Yes, stay alive and let trained crews handle this. Despite everything, I almost smiled. That is a strange thing to say to me. You know what I mean, I do. Then act like it. I looked at Atlas. The dog had moved toward the steel door. People still at the assisted living place. Ellis did not answer immediately. Ellis, how many? 9 residents, 2 staff. One of the staff cannot drive. That decided it. I will call you when I reach the saddle. Caleb. I released the switch. Atlas and I climbed back into the evening. The world had changed in less than an hour. The western horizon was no longer copper. It was black. Smoke had risen high enough to create its own sky, a wall of darkness rolling over the basin in layers. The sun glowed through it like a red coin. Ash drifted through the air. One piece landed on Atlas's back. He shook it away. Far to the west, something boomed. Probably propane. Maybe a transformer. The sound carried across the ridge with a delay that made distance impossible to judge. I checked the wind. Stronger, hotter, the kind of wind that makes every dry branch feel like a loaded weapon. I looked down toward the ranch. Gavin's truck was gone. So was Renee's sport utility vehicle. For a moment, anger came clean and sharp. They had told me to leave, then they had left before me. No warning, no message, nothing. Atlas started downhill. Not yet, he stopped, I thought. The east saddle lay above us, another 2 miles on foot if the old trail still existed. But there were people below who might never make that climb. I needed transportation. The ranch still had an old utility truck in the equipment barn. At least it had when I arrived. If Gavin had not taken it, I could move people toward the eastern side before the fire cut us off. We went down fast, too fast for caution. Dry dirt slid beneath my boots. Atlas flowed ahead of me, picking cleaner ground. I kept one eye on the smoke and the other on the basin. By the time we reached the lower road, the light had turned orange. Not sunset, firelight. The barn door was locked. Of course it was. I checked the side entrance, locked too. Atlas circled behind the structure. A few seconds later he barked once, one bark, clear. Purposeful, I followed him. The rear service door stood partly open. Someone had forgotten to latch it. Inside, the barn smelled of diesel, hay, leather, and panic. Tools were missing from the wall. 2 fuel cans were gone. Utility truck was still there. A faded 3/4-ton pickup with a steel flatbed and enough scars to tell you it had never lived an easy life. The key was not in the ignition. I knew where my stepfather used to keep a spare. Under the workbench, inside an old coffee tin labeled fencing staples. It was still there. I climbed in. Atlas loaded without being told. That almost made me laugh. Now he was willing. The engine turned twice before catching. I backed out and aimed toward the county road. The radio in the truck was useless. Cellular service showed 1 weak bar, then none. I drove toward the assisted living home. Smoke reduced visibility by half before I reached the first intersection. A pickup came toward me from the opposite direction, horn blaring. I stopped. The driver leaned out. Road is closed. Where? Past the church. Tree came down. Fire? Not there yet. Assisted living home? He shook his head. Do not know. He drove on before I could ask more. Fear does that, narrows the world until everyone else becomes scenery. I kept going. At the church, a ponderosa pine had fallen across both lanes. Its trunk was nearly 3 feet thick, too big to move. But the ditch beside it was shallow. I put the truck into low range. Atlas braced himself against the seat. Hold on, we dropped one side into the ditch. Branches scraped the doors. The truck leaned hard enough that I felt the center of gravity move. Then the rear tires caught. We climbed through. A mile farther east I saw the assisted living home. Juniper House, a 1-story building with 12 rooms, a metal roof, and a wraparound porch where my mother used to volunteer twice a month. 3 people stood outside waving towels. I pulled into the lot. A woman ran toward me. She was in her 50s, short gray hair, medical scrubs under a heavy jacket. Thank God. How many? Everyone mobile. Her face answered before her mouth did. No. Wheelchairs? 3, oxygen, 2 portable, some. I looked at the truck. Flatbed. No side rails high enough for safe passenger. Not ideal, still better than burning any. And, she pointed. A small shuttle sat near the building. Won't start. Keys? She handed them over. I tried it. Click. Dead battery. Jumper cables? Garage. Get them. Atlas jumped down. One of the residents froze when he saw him. An old man in plaid pajamas under a winter coat stared at Atlas with wide eyes. That a police dog? Former working dog. The man nodded slowly. Good. Then he looked toward the smoke. We might need one. I connected the cables. The shuttle started on the second attempt. That gave us capacity. I grabbed the nurse. What is your name? Marcy. Load everyone. Take only medication, oxygen, blankets, water. Where are we going? East. The evacuation route is west. Not anymore, she stared at me. I pointed toward the sky. West is losing. Something in my voice convinced her. Maybe it was not the words. Maybe people simply need to hear certainty when everything around them is uncertain. She started moving. I called Ellis from the building's landline. It took 3 attempts. This is Caleb. Where the hell are you? Juniper House. A pause. Of course you are. I have 11 civilians. Shuttle works. West route is gone. I know. What about Quarry Road? Open from the eastern side, so if we cross the saddle, we can get them out. If you can cross, send somebody to the quarry entrance. Already have a deputy heading there. Good. Caleb, the fire accelerated. How much? It may reach the ranch corridor in 40 minutes. I looked at Marcy helping an elderly woman into the shuttle. We need more time, so does everybody. I almost hung up. Then I remembered the letter. Ellis. Yeah? My mother wrote something about a man knowing who I am. Nothing came back. Ellis, I heard you. Who was she talking about? This is not the time. The silence stretched too long. Finally, Ellis said, I do not know if the name she knew was real. Give it to me, Silas Creed. I felt absolutely nothing. No recognition, no memory. Who is he? I told you. Later. Ellis, you want the short version? Yes. He came to Juniper Basin almost 50 years ago, looking for a woman named Mara Vale. I looked toward the hidden relay station far above us. The name on the binder, Mara. Yes, who was she? Ellis answered quietly, your mother's best friend. My fingers tightened around the phone. And Silas Creed? He was the reason Mara disappeared. The line clicked, then went dead. I stood there with the receiver against my ear. Atlas nudged my leg. I hung up. Mara to Silas Creed. My mother. East Relay. None of it fit yet, but I had learned a long time ago not to force a picture from pieces that were still arriving. We loaded the last resident. Marcy took the shuttle. I led in the utility truck. The east saddle trail began behind a cattle gate near the old Rowan boundary. The gate was chained. I drove through it. Wood and wire snapped beneath the bumper. Nobody complained. The first mile was rough but passable. Then the trail began climbing. The shuttle struggled. I stopped twice to clear branches, once to move a rock. Smoke was thick enough now. Headlights helped, even though the sun had not fully set. Atlas rode with his nose near the cracked window. Every few minutes his ears shifted. Listening. At a switchback near the top he suddenly stood. His head turned sharply downhill. A second later I heard an engine. Fast, wrong direction. A sport utility vehicle came around the bend behind us. Renee. She stopped less than 20 feet from my bumper. I got out. Gavin was driving. Renee sat beside him. Neither looked surprised to see me. That made me angry in a new way. Not hot anger, cold. What are you doing here? Gavin asked. Moving people out. He looked past me at the shuttle. The east trail is blocked. How do you know? His eyes shifted. Just once, but I saw it. County notice, there is no service. Before service went down, Renee leaned forward. Caleb, we need to keep moving. Then keep moving. Gavin did not. He stayed behind the wheel. Where are you taking them? Quarry Road. He shook his head. You will never get that shuttle through the landslide. Then I will find another way. A burst of static came from the handheld fire radio clipped to his dashboard. I looked at it. County-issued model. Gavin followed my eyes. Too late. Where did you get that? He said nothing. I walked closer. That channel is not public. Renee looked at him. For the first time she seemed confused too. Gavin? He ignored her. Move your truck, Caleb. I did not. Atlas stepped out from behind me. He did not bark. He simply stood in the trail. Gavin's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I saw fear in his face, not fear of the dog, fear of delay. He needed to get somewhere, quickly. I remembered him standing in my mother's bedroom doorway. What did you find? I looked past his vehicle toward the upper ridge. You knew about East Relay. Renee turned toward him. What? Gavin stared at me. You are wasting time. You knew, no. Then why did you ask what I found in Mom's coat? His jaw set. Renee said his name again, stronger this time. Gavin Atlas moved one step closer to the sport utility vehicle. His nose lifted, then his focus snapped toward the rear cargo area. He walked to it, sniffed, stopped, sat. My pulse changed. Atlas had been trained for several types of detection over his working life. But that particular behavior meant only one thing. He had found a source he was certain about. I walked toward the rear hatch. Gavin got out immediately. Do not. That was his mistake. I turned. What is in the back? Supplies. Open it. No. Renee was staring at him now. Gavin, what is going on? He looked at her, then at me. The mask finally slipped. Not much. Enough. I said move. I stepped between him and the vehicle. Open it. The wind screamed through the trees. A shower of ash crossed the trail. Somewhere behind us, Marcy leaned on the shuttle horn. The elderly passengers did not have time for this. I knew that. Gavin knew it too. That was why he expected me to back down. Instead, Renee reached across from inside and pressed the hatch release. The rear door lifted. Gavin spun toward her. What are you doing? But it was open and Atlas was already there. Inside were 2 red fuel cans, 3 duffel bags, a metal document case, and a wooden crate I recognized immediately. It had been in my mother's bedroom closet for as long as I could remember. She called it her winter box. She kept old blankets inside. At least that was what she had told me. The lid was partly broken. One corner had split. Papers were visible beneath. Gavin moved toward the hatch. Atlas gave a low warning. Gavin stopped. I reached inside and opened the crate. No blankets, photographs, maps, a small portable radio. Stacks of handwritten pages, and beneath all of it, a photograph in a cracked frame. 3 people stood in front of East Relay when the entrance was still visible. My mother, young, Meiji. Beside her stood a dark-haired woman I had never seen before. Mara Vale, I knew it had to be. Between them stood a man in an old Forest Service jacket. His face was partly turned away from the camera, but something about him made my skin go cold. The shape of the jaw, the set of the shoulders, the distance between the eyes. I had seen versions of those features every morning in a mirror for almost 50 years. Renee whispered, "Oh my God." I turned the photograph over. One sentence was written on the back: Evelyn, Mara, and Daniel. Summer of 1978. Daniel. Not Silas Creed. Not my father. Not anybody I knew. Gavin grabbed the photograph from my hand. I caught his wrist hard. He winced. "Give it back." "Caleb, you do not understand." "Then explain it." "There is no time. You found time to steal the box." His face changed. "I did not steal it. It belonged to my mother. She told me to destroy it." Renee stared at him. "When?" He hesitated. "Why did you not?" Another hesitation. That one mattered. I saw the answer before he said anything. "Because someone wanted it." Gavin looked at me. Firelight flickered faintly through the smoke behind him. A strange orange pulse. "Someone paid you." He did not deny it. I tightened my grip on his wrist. "Who?" Atlas suddenly turned. Not toward Gavin, downhill, his entire body locked. Then we heard it. Not thunder, not wind, fire. Close enough now that it sounded alive. Marcy shouted from the shuttle. "Caleb!" I let Gavin go. Whatever he had done, whatever was in the crate, none of it mattered if 11 people died while I tried to solve a 48-year-old secret. "Drive," I told Gavin. He rubbed his wrist. "Where?" "Up. I told you the trail is blocked. Then you are going to help me clear it." He stared at me. I stepped closer. "And if you leave these people behind, I will personally drag you out of that vehicle." Renee opened her door. "I will help." Gavin looked at her. She did not look back. The trail narrowed to 1 lane beyond the switchback. We climbed. Smoke turned night into a red dusk. The roar behind us grew louder. Branches began dropping embers. Every dry needle on the ground became dangerous. Then we reached the landslide. Ellis had not exaggerated. Half the mountain had fallen across the trail, boulders, broken timber, loose dirt. The old road vanished beneath a wall nearly 15 feet high. The shuttle stopped. Marcy stepped out and looked at me. "Please tell me there is another road." I climbed onto the debris. Atlas followed. At the top, my headlamp found nothing but broken ground for another 100 yards. Too unstable for vehicles, maybe passable on foot. But not with wheelchairs, not with oxygen, not with residents who could barely stand. Behind me, Gavin said, "I told you." I ignored him. There had to be something. An old cattle cut, a fire break, a service line, anything. Atlas moved across the debris, nose down, then he disappeared behind a slab of basalt. Atlas, he came back, looked at me, went behind the rock again. I followed. There, hidden beneath brush, was a narrow steel marker driven into the earth. ER Access B, East Relay, Access B. My mother's map binder flashed through my memory. A relay station would not have only one entrance. Not if it was designed as an emergency facility. I looked downslope. The marker pointed toward a narrow ravine running north. "Marcy," she climbed up. "What?" "Keep everyone in the vehicles." "Why?" Because we are not going over the mountain. I looked toward Atlas. We are going through it. It took us less than 10 minutes to find the second door. An old steel service entrance nearly buried in stone and brush. The brass key opened that one too. Beyond it was a concrete corridor wide enough for maintenance carts. I swept my light across the floor, old rails. That was when I understood. The East Relay Station was bigger than the room I had found. Much bigger. It had been built into the mountain as part of some forgotten emergency system. And if the service corridor continued east, it might come out beyond the landslide. I keyed my handheld radio, Ellis East Relay, static. Then his voice, "Go, how much do you know about the station?" A pause. "Enough. Does it have a service tunnel through the ridge?" Another pause. "Longer, yes. I closed my eyes, you might have mentioned that. I did not know the doors still opened. Where does it exit?" Old Quarry side. I looked back at the trapped vehicles. "Can people walk it?" "How long?" "Half a mile. Maybe more. Wheelchairs could roll on concrete. Oxygen could be carried. It could work." Then Ellis said, "Caleb, listen to me." Something in his tone changed. "What?" "The fire just entered Rowan property." For 1 second I saw the ranch, the kitchen, my mother's bedroom, the barn, the porch, every place I had thought I was losing to Gavin. Now fire might take all of it. I thought I would feel grief. Instead I felt clarity. A house is not a promise. A road is not a promise. Even blood is not always a promise. But 11 people were waiting behind me. Atlas stood at my side. That was real. "We are going through the tunnel," I said. "Good." Then Ellis lowered his voice. "And Caleb?" "Yeah, if you find a blue steel door inside, do not open it." I stared into the darkness ahead. "Why?" Static broke across his answer. I caught only fragments, Mara, then something else. "Creed." The transmission vanished. I looked at Atlas. "Of course there is a blue door." We started moving people. Wheelchairs first. Marcy took the front. Renee carried oxygen bottle. Even Gavin helped, though he kept looking behind us, as though the fire were not the only thing chasing him. The tunnel smelled of cold concrete and old metal. Our lights moved across walls painted with faded emergency arrows. Every 100 feet, small rooms opened to either side. Storage, electrical panels, water equipment. This had not been built by one frightened family. This was infrastructure, deliberate, expensive, official. Which meant someone had known about it, and someone had wanted it forgotten. We were maybe a quarter mile in when Atlas stopped. He turned toward a side passage. I kept going. "Come." He did not. I looked back. His ears were forward, nose high. "Atlas." He moved into the side corridor. 3 steps. 4, then sat. I handed my flashlight to Renee. "Keep them moving slowly." "Where are you going?" 30 seconds. I followed him. At the end of the passage stood a door, blue steel. Paint chipped with age. A brass plate beside it read Archive. My stomach tightened. Ellis's warning came back immediately. "Do not open it." Atlas sniffed beneath the door. His breathing changed. Not detection, recognition. I scratched once, then looked at me. "What do you smell?" He scratched again. I put my hand against the steel. "Cold." I should have walked away. 11 people were depending on me. Fire was moving toward the mountain. Ellis had specifically warned me. Every rational part of my mind said, "Leave the door closed." Then I noticed something taped beside the frame, a small strip of faded red wool, the same color as my mother's coat. Pinned beneath it was a note. 1 sentence, written in her hand. "Caleb, if Atlas brings you here, open the door." I stared at the dog. The tunnel seemed to narrow around us. My mother had written his name Atlas, not dog, not shepherd. Atlas. She had written a note for a dog I did not meet until decades later. Behind me, Gavin shouted, "Caleb, do not." I turned. He was running toward us. For the first time since the fire began, he looked genuinely terrified. Not of flames, of that door. I took the brass key from my pocket. Gavin reached me just as I placed it in the lock. "She told me to burn everything in there." His voice cracked. "No, Caleb, listen to me. You told me she wanted the box destroyed. She did. Now you are telling me she wanted this destroyed too." "Yes." "Then why did she leave me a note telling me to open it?" He froze. That was the moment I knew. My mother had never told Gavin to destroy anything. Someone else had. I turned the key. The lock released. Gavin whispered a name behind me, not to me, to himself. "Silas." I opened the blue door. The room beyond was small, dry, sealed. 1 chair, 1 tape recorder. And on the wall, dozens of photographs. My mother, Mara Vale, Ellis Ward, the man named Daniel, and a baby. The same baby appeared again and again, wrapped in a yellow blanket, held by different people, hidden in different places. One photograph had a date, another had coordinates. Then I saw the final image. A woman stood beside a younger version of my mother, holding the baby against her chest. Mara, on the back written in black ink for 6 words. Caleb, 3 days before we moved him. My legs stopped working for a second. Moved him, not born, not visited, moved, Atlas pressed against me. I reached for the tape recorder. A cassette was already inside. A label had been fixed across the front for Caleb Rowan. I pressed play. Nothing, a woman's breath. And finally a voice, my mother's, older than she was in the photographs. Younger than the woman I buried 3 days ago. Caleb, if you are hearing this, then either I failed to tell you the truth, or I died before I could. I could not move. Behind me nobody spoke. Even Gavin had gone silent. My mother's voice continued. The first thing you need to know is that Mara Vale was not your mother. My breath caught. Every assumption I had just made broke apart. The second thing you need to know is that Daniel was Munderns, not your father. I stared at the photograph in my hand. Then she said the words that made the fire, the tunnel, Gavin, and every secret in my life suddenly feel small. The people who gave you to me were running from Silas Creed. A pause, tape hiss. Then my mother said, and Silas Creed was not trying to kill them. Another pause. He was trying to get you back. He was trying to get you back. My mother's voice disappeared beneath the soft hiss of the cassette. For several seconds, I heard nothing else, not the people breathing behind me, not the fire somewhere beyond the concrete, not Gavin, not even Atlas. All I heard was that sentence, trying to get you back. I pressed stop, then rewind. Gavin stepped toward me. Caleb, we need to move. I did not look at him. I pressed play again. My mother's voice returned. The people who gave you to me were running from Silas Creed. A pause, and Silas Creed was not trying to kill them. Another pause. He was trying to get you back. I stopped the tape again. This time Renee spoke. What does that mean? Nobody answered. I turned to Gavin. He looked pale beneath the ash smeared across his face. You know. No, you knew enough to be afraid of this room. I knew my father hated this place. That was new. I stared at him. Your father? Gavin swallowed. My father knew about the relay. How? I do not know. Wrong answer. I was a kid. So was I. Behind us, Marcy called from the main tunnel. Caleb. Urgency snapped me back into the present. I looked toward the residence. An elderly woman had begun coughing hard. One of the portable oxygen units was making a warning chirp. Truth could wait another minute. Air could not. I pulled the cassette from the recorder and slipped it into my jacket. Then I took 3 photographs from the wall. Mara, Daniel, the baby, me, apparently. I put them inside the same inner pocket as my mother's letter. Move. Gavin stared at the tape. Caleb, now we returned to the main corridor. Atlas fell into position beside me. The elderly woman was struggling to breathe. Her name was Dorothy. I remembered her from when I was a teenager. She had worked at the feed store and once caught me stealing cinnamon candy from a jar near the register. She had made me sweep the floor for 2 hours instead of calling my mother. Now she sat in a wheelchair beneath emergency lights that barely worked, her hands trembling around an oxygen mask. I crouched beside her. Miss Dorothy, her eyes opened. You still owe me for that candy. I almost smiled. You remember, old women remember debts. Her voice was weak. That was good. Weak meant talking. Talking meant air was still moving. Marcy checked the tank. We have maybe 20 minutes at this flow. How many more tanks full? 1 almost empty. I looked down the tunnel. We still had distance to cover. Use the full one. I was saving it. For what? She looked at Dorothy, then nodded. We continued. The service tunnel bent gradually east. The floor was mostly level, but roots had broken through sections of concrete. Water dripped from old seams. Emergency signs hung crooked from the walls. Every few hundred feet I stopped and listened. Not for voices. For air. Fire changes the way air moves. Heat pulls. Pressure shifts. Smoke finds openings before flame does. The farther east we went, the more I smelled something I did not like. Burned wood, faint then stronger. Marcy smelled it. We picked up the pace. The residents tried. Some could not. An old man named Harold insisted on walking beside his wheelchair instead of sitting in it. I survived Korea, he told me. You can survive this sitting down. He glared. I sat down enough in the army. You were army? Infantry. Then you should understand an order. That got him into the chair. Atlas moved between the group and the darkness ahead, checking back every few minutes. He was not trained for wildfire evacuation, neither was I. But the fundamentals never changed. Know where your people are. Know where your exits are. Never assume the route behind you will still exist. We reached a junction, 3 corridors, one marked quarry exit, one marked generator, the third had no sign. I took the quarry route. Atlas did not. He stopped at the unmarked corridor. Atlas, he sniffed the floor, then looked back at me. No, he stayed. Renee said, is he refusing again? Yes, should we listen? I hated that the answer was yes. I walked back. The unmarked corridor sloped slightly upward. There was fresh air coming through it, very faint. Cooler. Atlas moved forward. 20 yards in, we found another steel door. This one stood open. Beyond it was a narrow stairway. At the top, daylight flickered through metal grating. I climbed. The grate opened into a concrete observation box hidden beneath brush. I pushed it aside. Smoke hit me immediately, but so did open air. We were on the eastern face of the ridge. Below us, perhaps half a mile away, Quarry Road ran north to south. No fire on this side, not yet. Relief stayed about 2 seconds. Then I saw the main quarry exit 100 yards south of us. Smoke was pouring from it. The service tunnel we had been following was compromised. Atlas had smelled it before I did, good boy. His tail moved once. I went back down. We changed routes. Marcy stared at me. Why? Main exit is pulling smoke. Where does this go? Up wheelchairs? I looked at the stairway, too narrow, too steep, no ramp. We had 9 elderly residents. 3 wheelchairs, 2 oxygen users, 2 staff members, Renee, Gavin, and 1 dog. The emergency exit was close to safety, but designed for able-bodied workers. Of course it was. I rubbed a hand across my face. There was always a problem after the problem. That was life. That was operations. That was fire. We make a lift. Marcy blinked. A what? I pointed toward the maintenance rails built into the tunnel floor. Those tracks carried equipment carts. We had passed one abandoned cart near the archive junction. Flat metal platform, small steel wheels. Renee, stay with them. She nodded. Gavin with me. He hesitated. I stared at him. Unless you want to explain to 12 people why family secrets are more important than their lungs. He followed. Atlas came too. We ran back through the tunnel. At the blue archive door, Gavin slowed. His eyes shifted toward it. I saw him. Keep moving, he did. We found the maintenance cart lodged against a broken section of rail. It weighed maybe 200 pounds. The wheels had rusted. One axle was partially seized. Gavin grabbed one side. This thing will never roll. It does not need to roll far. We rocked it loose. Metal screamed against metal. Atlas barked once at the noise. Then somewhere deep inside the ridge came another sound. A heavy boom. Dust fell from the ceiling. Gavin froze. What was that? Something failed. What? If we stand here discussing it, maybe we find out personally. We pulled harder. The cart moved slowly. I checked the wheels. 1 turned, 2 dragged, the 4th was barely free. Good enough. We hauled it back toward the group. My shoulders burned. Gavin stumbled twice. The second time, I caught the cart before it crushed his ankle. He stared at me. Why did you do that? I almost did not understand the question. Do what? Stop it. Because it would have broken your leg. You hate me. I do not have time to hate you. That shut him up. At the stairwell, we used emergency rope from a wall cabinet and built a crude hauling system through the railing. It was ugly. Ugly works. The first wheelchair went onto the cart. We secured the resident. Then Gavin and I hauled from above, while Marcy and Renee guided from below. Foot by foot, steel scraping concrete, rope cutting into my gloves. The cart reached the upper landing. We transferred the woman into her chair. Then went back down, second chair, then third. Atlas moved with every load. Up, down, checking, watching, refusing to leave anyone alone. Dorothy came last. Her breathing had worsened. Marcy crouched beside her. Caleb, she needs a hospital, I know, now I know. Dorothy opened her eyes. Stop talking about me like I am luggage. Marcy laughed once despite herself, then cried while she was laughing. That told me how close to the edge everyone was. We got Dorothy onto the cart. Halfway up, the rope slipped. The platform dropped 6 inches. Dorothy gasped. I caught the line around my forearm. Pain shot through my elbow. Gavin grabbed the rope beside me. Pull. For once we moved together. No history, no lies. No ranch. Two men trying not to let an old woman fall down a concrete stairwell while fire ate the mountain behind us. We hauled. The cart reached the top. Marcy checked Dorothy. Still conscious, still breathing. That was terrible, Dorothy whispered. Want to file a complaint? I planned to. Good. We got everyone outside. The eastern air felt almost clean compared with the tunnel. Almost. Smoke covered the sky, but wind pushed most of it north. Quarry Road was visible below. A sheriff's vehicle sat at the intersection with emergency lights flashing. The deputy spotted us and waved both arms. We had made it. I should have felt relief. Instead, Atlas turned back toward the grate. His ears lifted. Atlas. He stared into the darkness. A sound came from below, faint, then a voice. Help! Everyone froze. Gavin went white. Renee looked at him. Who else is down there? He said nothing. The voice came again. Please. Marcy looked at me. I looked at Gavin. His face had changed completely. Not fear anymore. Recognition. You knew someone was in there. He shook his fast. Gavin. I did not know. Who? I thought he left. Who? His eyes dropped. Mr. Harlan. Renee stared at him. Who is Mr. Harlan? Gavin did not answer. I grabbed his jacket. Who is he? A man who came to the ranch. When? This morning. Before the funeral gathering. Before I arrived. What did he want? The box, the winter box, my mother's files, full name. Victor Harlan. I do not know, Silas. No, Creed? I said I do not know. Another voice rose from the tunnel. Closer now, coughing. I let Gavin go. Marcy stepped toward me. You cannot go back, she was right. The tunnel already smelled worse. Smoke, hot wiring. Something chemical. You have all the residents? Yes. Deputy can take them, yes. Then go. Go. Dorothy reached out from her wheelchair and caught my sleeve. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Your mother would slap you for this. I looked at her. For going back? For pretending you already decided. I stared at her. She released me. Decide, then go. People over 70 have a way of cutting through nonsense. Younger people spend paragraphs trying to explain. I looked into the tunnel. A stranger, possibly connected to the lies surrounding my mother. Possibly dangerous, definitely trapped. I had a choice. That was the ugly part. Going back was not instinct. It was not automatic. I wanted to stay outside. I wanted the fresh air. I wanted the deputy. I wanted somebody else to do it. Then Atlas stepped through the grate. Choice made. Damn dog, I followed. Gavin came behind me. I stopped. No, he knows me. That is exactly why you stay out. He may listen to me or he may shoot you. Renee inhaled sharply. Gavin looked at her, then at me. He has a gun, of course he did. I stared at him. You were going to mention that when? I told him not to come. Where did he enter? Ranch hatch. That meant Victor Harlan had followed us into East Relay sometime after we left the assisted living home. Maybe looking for the archive. Maybe looking for the cassette. Maybe for me. Atlas was already moving down the stairs. I followed. Gavin stays outside. For once he obeyed. The smoke layer inside the tunnel had thickened. I pulled my shirt over my nose. Atlas stayed low. We moved back toward the archive junction. Victor. My voice carried through the concrete. Coughing answered. Then a shot. The sound inside the tunnel was enormous. Atlas dropped. I dropped with him. The bullet struck somewhere above us. Concrete dust rained down. Victor. Back. His voice was raw. Panicked. That was dangerous. A calm, armed man can be read. A terrified one is governed by noise inside his own head. I kept my hands visible even though he could not see them yet. My name is Caleb Rowan. Silence. Then I know who you are. Those 6 words followed me all day. My mother's letter. The photograph. Now this man, then you know I am trying to get you out. You opened it, the archive. You should have burned everything. Funny. Gavin said the same thing. He is an idiot. We agree on something. Atlas moved against the wall. Slow, silent. I touched his collar. Stay, he stopped. Smoke thickened around us. I heard Victor coughing again. Closer than I expected, maybe 30 yards. What happened? No answer. Victor, fire is entering the tunnel, I know. Then put the weapon down. I cannot. Why? Because once I walk out I am dead anyway. That was not what a man says because he is trapped by wildfire. That was a man afraid of people. Who kills you? He laughed. One broken sound. You really do not know. No, your mother did her job. My jaw tightened. Tell me, you think Evelyn hid you because Silas Creed was a monster? I said nothing. Victor continued. That is what she wanted everyone to believe. Was he? No. Then who was? Long pause. The people he worked for. Something shifted inside my chest. Who did he work for? I heard him move. Metal scraped concrete. Victor, a company. What company? It had different names. What did it do? Whatever it was paid to do, that is not an answer. It is the only one you get. Smoke curled around the ceiling above me. Visibility was dropping. We did not have much time. Then tell me why they wanted a baby. Silence. Victor said, not the baby. What? They wanted what came with him. I felt cold despite the heat. What came with me? A deep cracking sound rolled through the tunnel. The lights died. Darkness. Atlas pressed against my knee. My headlamp came on automatically. A second later, red emergency lamps flickered weakly. Victor swore. Move toward my voice, I said. No. The tunnel is failing. Then move. He did. Slow footsteps. A man appeared through late 60s. Maybe older, gray hair soaked with sweat, ash across his face. A revolver in one hand, a metal case cuffed to his other wrist. That caught my attention. Atlas growled. Victor stopped. Call him off. He is not on you. He is looking at me. He looks at everyone. That dog knows. Knows what? Victor stared at Atlas. Then something like disbelief moved across his face. No, he took one step backward. Atlas's ears lifted. Victor whispered. That line is still alive. I had no idea what he meant. What line? He looked at me. Your dog? His name is I know. My breathing stopped for half a second. How? Victor's gaze moved from Atlas to me, because I saw his breeder records. I stepped closer. You know my him? Victor swallowed. His bloodline. Atlas growled again. Victor looked almost afraid of him. Silas bred shepherds. The words landed strangely. What? Working dogs, search, patrol, tracking. He kept the line private. I remembered my mother's note. If Atlas brings you here, open the door. Not coincidence, not prophecy, something planned. I stared at Victor. My mother knew what dog I had. Yes, how? Victor raised the metal case slightly. Because someone made sure you got him. My anger came fast. Who? Victor's eyes shifted. Then he raised the gun. Not at me, past me, down I dropped. A figure moved in the red emergency light behind us. Not Gavin, not anyone from our group. Victor fired. The stranger fired back. The tunnel exploded with sound. Atlas launched. Atlas. Too late. He hit the stranger high in the chest. Both went down. The gun skidded across the floor. I moved. 3 steps. Knee to the weapon. Hand on the stranger's wrist. He punched hard into my ribs. I drove him into the concrete. He reached for a knife. Atlas clamped onto his forearm. The man screamed. He did. I kicked the knife away. Victor stood 10 yards back, gun shaking in his hand. Who is he? Victor stared at the man on the floor. Then at me. He came for the case. The stranger laughed despite Atlas holding him. You old fool. I looked down at him. He was perhaps 40. Clean boots despite the fire. No smoke damage on his jacket. He had entered recently, prepared.
Who sent you?
He smiled. Ask your mother. My mother is dead. His smile disappeared. No, everything inside me stopped. What did you say? Victor shouted. Do not listen to him. The stranger looked directly at me. That woman in the grave is Evelyn Rowan. I know, but Evelyn Rowan was never your mother. Victor raised the revolver. Shut up. I moved between them. Nobody shoots anyone. Caleb, move. The stranger laughed again. You still think this is about who gave birth to you? I crouched closer. Then what is it about? He looked at the metal case cuffed to Victor's wrist. Victor backed away. No, the man smiled. See, I stood. Victor. No, you want out of this tunnel? Yes, then we move. I cannot take this outside. Why? Because people died keeping it buried. A violent boom shook the corridor. This time the ceiling cracked. A slab fell 20 feet behind us. Smoke surged through the opening. We were out of time. I pointed toward the east stairwell. Move. Victor hesitated. I stepped closer. If the truth in that case matters, dying beside it is the fastest way to make sure nobody ever hears it. That reached him. He moved. I looked down at the stranger. Atlas still held his forearm. You walk? He nodded. Then walk. I took the gun and knife, used a plastic restraint from Victor's belt to secure the man's wrists in front. Atlas out. Atlas released immediately. The stranger stared at him. Blood ran down his sleeve. Good dog. Atlas showed him enough teeth to end the compliment. We started east. The tunnel behind us roared. Heat chased us. Victor struggled to keep pace. The cuffed case slammed against his leg. The stranger stumbled. I shoved him forward. Keep moving. Do you even know what you are saving? A human being. He laughed. You people really trained that out of you? What? Curiosity. I pushed him again. I just learned priorities. We reached the stairwell. Smoke was pouring through the upper grate now. Outside, the wind had shifted. Bad. The eastern side was no longer safe. Embers crossed Quarry Road. The deputy's vehicle was gone. Good. Residents evacuated, but fire had found us. Gavin and Renee waited near the road. When Gavin saw Victor, his face drained. Victor stared at him. You took the box. You paid me. I paid you to bring it to me. You never said people would die. Victor laughed bitterly. People always say that after they take the money. Renee turned on Gavin. You sold Evelyn's paper? He said nothing. She slapped him hard. The sound was small compared with the fire, but satisfying. Then Atlas barked toward the north. A vehicle horn answered, one long blast, then another. Through the smoke, headlights appeared. A county brush truck. Ellis Ward was driving. He stopped beside us and climbed out before the wheels quit moving. 74 years old, white hair, fire jacket, eyes sharper than most men half his age. He saw me, then Victor, then the prisoner, then Atlas. Of all the bad decisions you could have made, Ellis said, you made every single one. Good to see you too. He pointed toward the truck. Load. Victor held back. Ellis saw the case. His expression changed. You brought it out. Had no choice. There is always a choice. The stranger looked at Ellis and smiled. Chief Ward. Ellis went still. I asked. Ellis stared at the man. I know what he is. The stranger shrugged. That hurts. Who is he? Ellis looked at me later. I almost shouted. Every person in my life had apparently agreed that later was the proper time for everything. Then fire crowned in the trees behind us. The sky turned orange. Ellis pointed at the truck. Now we loaded. Atlas jumped beside me. Gavin and Renee squeezed into the rear crew area with Victor. The prisoner sat on the floor, wrists secured. Ellis accelerated north. Flames moved through the trees on our left, faster than any human being could run. The brush truck bounced over ruts hard enough to lift us from the seats. What route? I asked. Clear? Was. That is comforting. Ellis glanced at Atlas. He really is the one. I turned. The one what? Ellis kept driving. Evelyn showed me a photograph 3 years ago. Told me if a shepherd with a white scar under his left ear ever came back to Juniper Basin with you, I was supposed to take you to East Relay. I looked at Atlas. My hand moved automatically beneath his ear. There, a thin white scar. Old. He had it when I first met him. I stared at Ellis. Who arranged for me to get him? Ellis tightened his hands around the wheel. Silas Creed. I could not speak. That is impossible. No, I got Atlas through a military working dog retirement placement. Yes, Silas would have had to know where I was. He did. How? Ellis looked at me. Because he knew where you were your entire life. The prisoner laughed quietly from the floor. Victor said, do not. Ellis ignored both of them. Silas never stopped watching. My anger rose again. Then why did he never come to me? Because Evelyn made him promise. Why? Because if the wrong people knew Silas had found you, they would know Evelyn had lied about what happened that night. What night? Ellis turned the truck hard around a burning tree. The night Juniper Basin lost 23 people. I knew the story. Every child raised there did. The Vale Fire. 1978. Lightning, according to the official record. And 23 dead. Several homes destroyed. One unidentified child listed among the missing. My stomach dropped. Mara vodded. She was there. Daniel? Yes. Silas? Yes. And me? Ellis looked straight ahead. You were the reason they were all in that valley. Nobody spoke. The truck entered a narrow cut through the quarry. Stone walls rose on both sides. Firelight flickered overhead. For a moment we were inside a canyon of smoke and orange light. I looked at the prisoner. Who are you? He smiled. Jonah Pierce. Who sent you? No point telling you. Try. He looked toward the case. Open it and you will understand. Victor pulled it closer. No. I looked at the handcuff attaching it to him. Then at Ellis. What is in there? Ellis did not answer. Victor did. Evidence of why the fire started. The official story again. Lightning. I stared at him. It was not lightning. Victor shook his head. No. What was it? His voice dropped. A test. Renee whispered. A test of what? Victor looked toward the flames outside. Fire. Nobody said anything. He continued. Controlled ignition. Wind behavior. Emergency response delay. They wanted data. My skin went cold. They burned a valley to collect data? They were not supposed to lose control. The prisoner laughed. That is the clean version. I looked at him. And the dirty version? Jonah leaned his head against the seat. The valley had something they needed erased. What? His eye settled on me. Records, what records? You keep asking the wrong question. Then give me the right one. He smiled again. Ask why a newborn baby needed a new name. The brush truck burst out of the quarry cut. Ahead of us, emergency lights flashed through the smoke. Fire crews, ambulances, safety, at least temporary. Ellis slowed. I should have felt relief again. I did not. Because Atlas stood suddenly. His head snapped toward the south, toward the basin. Then he whined, not fear, recognition. Ellis looked at him. What? I followed Atlas's line of sight. Beyond the smoke, beyond the fire, somewhere behind the ridge, was the ranch. My mother's house, the place Gavin had taken from me. The place I thought the fire had already reached. Atlas pawed at the door. Atlas, stay, he whined again. Then my handheld radio came alive. A broken transmission. Any unit, static. Rowan property. Ellis reached for his radio. Say again. The reply was almost buried by interference. Possible civilian trapped at Rowan Ranch. Female caller. Landline cut out before identification. Gavin stared at Renee. Who? She shook her head. There is nobody there. I thought of the vehicles. Both gone. The house should have been empty. Then Ellis looked at me. Not with confusion, with dread. He knew Caleb. What? His face had gone pale. Your mother kept a second landline. Where? In the storm room beneath the pantry. I had never heard of a storm room. Why? Ellis did not answer. Atlas struck the door with one paw. My pulse hammered. Who would be there? Ellis gripped the steering wheel. Then he said the one name nobody had wanted to say clearly all night. Silas. I stared at him. No, he came back 3 days before Evelyn died. You said he was watching from a distance. He was. Then why would he be at the ranch? Because Evelyn called him. For what? Ellis looked at me. To finally tell you the truth. The radio crackled again. This time a woman's dispatch voice came through clearly. All units advised. Rowan property now inside active flame front. Rescue access not recommended. Atlas shoved his nose against my hand. I looked toward the south. A wall of red light pulsed behind the ridge. Every trained instinct I had told me what those words meant. Active flame front, do not enter. No civilian rescue is worth adding more bodies. No mystery is worth dying for. Then Victor spoke quietly behind me. If Silas is in that house, he has the other half. I turned. The other half of what? He lifted the metal case attached to his wrist. For the first time, fear in his face had nothing to do with the fire. The proof. Jonah Pierce stopped smiling. Ellis stared at Victor. You said it was destroyed. Victor shook his head. I was wrong. What proof? I demanded. Victor looked at me. The proof of who ordered the Vale fire. I glanced toward the burning basin. And Silas has it. Why? Victor swallowed. Because Daniel gave it to him before Daniel died. Daniel, the man in the photograph, the man whose face looked enough like mine to make Renee gasp. I stepped closer. You said Daniel was not my father. He was not. Then who was he? Victor looked from me to Atlas. His answer came softly. He was your brother. The world narrowed. I stared at him. Older. How much older? 19 years. I could barely process the number. Then who was my father? Victor's eyes moved toward the flames. That is what Silas came to tell you. Atlas pawed at the truck door again. Behind the eastern ridge, the ranch was burning. Somewhere inside it, a man who had apparently watched my entire life might still be alive. A man my mother trusted enough to summon before she died. A man connected to Atlas. A man who carried the other half of evidence buried for nearly half a century. And maybe the only living person who could tell me why my name had been changed before I was old enough to remember it. Ellis shook his head. Caleb, no. I opened the truck door. Do not do this. I stepped down. Heat moved across the distant ridge like the breath of an open furnace. Atlas landed beside me. Ellis climbed out. You cannot outrun a crown fire. I know. The main road is gone. I know. You have no idea if Silas is even alive. I looked at him. No. Then what are you doing? For the first time all day, I did not have a tactical answer. I had something simpler. My mother spent almost 50 years trying to keep me alive long enough to hear the truth. I looked toward the burning ranch. If the man she trusted is still in that house, I am not leaving him there without trying. Ellis stared at me, then at Atlas. He muttered something under his breath that sounded like a prayer mixed with an insult. He reached into the brush truck and threw me a fire shelter pack. Then another piece of equipment, a respirator. If you die, he said, Evelyn will find a way to come back and blame me. I pulled on the pack. Probably Atlas pressed against my leg. I rested my hand on his head, his eyes stayed fixed on the burning ridge. One more time, partner. His tail moved once. Then Ellis grabbed my arm. There is something else. I looked back. He held my gaze. If you reach Silas, do not ask him who your father was first. Why? Ask him what happened to Mara. I frowned. You said Mara died in the Vale fire. Ellis slowly shook his head. No. Behind him, Victor closed his eyes. Jonah Pierce looked away. My throat tightened. Then where is she? Ellis released my arm. That is the problem. The fire roared somewhere beyond us. Nobody ever found out. Atlas turned south, and together we started back toward the place everyone else was trying to escape. The first 100 yards were the easiest. That should tell you what came after. Atlas and I moved south along the quarry access road, while Ellis's brush truck disappeared behind us in the smoke. I did not look back. Looking back does not change a decision. It only gives fear another chance to negotiate. The fire was still on this offside of the ridge, but the wind carried pieces of it ahead. Burning needles, ash, small glowing fragments of bark. Some landed in the road and died. Others landed in dry grass and became new problems. I kept us in the center of the gravel whenever possible. Atlas stayed close. His head was lower than usual. Ears working constantly. Every breath through his nose measured the world faster than I could. We had maybe 3 miles to the ranch by the old Eastern Service route. Maybe less. Distance becomes dishonest when smoke is involved. A mile can feel like 10 yards can disappear. I checked the respirator, checked Atlas, checked the fire shelter pack Ellis had thrown me. Then I checked the radio. Ellis, static, go. We are moving south, I know. How is the wind? Bad. You want poetry? I want direction. A pause, then his voice changed. Southwest at sustained 30. Gusting higher, I pictured the basin, fire moving northeast. Mostly is not a direction. Spotting ahead of the main front. That was worse. A crown fire does not need to touch you if burning debris is landing half a mile in front of it. Ranch status. Thermal camera from a county drone showed heat near the west barns. House not fully involved yet. Yet Caleb, I know. No, listen. If the wind jumps, you abandon. I did not answer. He knew what that meant. He repeated himself. If the wind jumps, you abandon. Copy. It was not a promise. We left the gravel road at the old stock trail. The terrain narrowed between basalt outcrops. Atlas moved ahead. The smoke thickened. At first the fire had been a distant roar. Now I could hear individual trees. That is a sound you do not forget. A dry pine does not burn quietly. It cracks, it snaps. Sometimes it explodes from trapped moisture, turning to steam. The noise comes from every direction, making the fire feel closer than it is. Then suddenly farther, then closer again. I had been around explosions. Gunfire, aircraft, engines. Nothing sounds like a forest deciding it is no longer a forest. Halfway down the trail, Atlas stopped. His head turned right. Show me. He moved off the path. We found a doe lying beneath a juniper. Alive, barely. One hind leg was caught between 2 fallen branches. Her sides moved too fast, eyes wide. Smoke had already done damage. Atlas stayed back. He looked at me. I looked toward the ranch. Time. Every instinct was a clock now. The animal struggled when I approached. Easy, she kicked once, weak. I pulled one branch at its side. Then the other, her leg came free. For a moment she did not move. Then she tried to stand, failed, tried again. This time she got up. She stared at me for half a second, then stumbled downhill away from the smoke. Atlas watched her go. That cost us. He looked at me. I shook my head. Do not. His tail moved once. We continued. The old ranch boundary came into view through the haze. The fence was already burning in places, posts glowing at the base. Wire sagging. The house was still standing, the barn was not. Flame pushed through the roof where I had kept my first saddle. The wind carried sparks across the yard. My mother's wind chime was still hanging from the porch. It moved violently, no sound, the fire was too loud. Atlas ran toward the house. Slow, he slowed, the porch steps were hot. Smoke leaked from beneath the eaves. The front door stood open. That was not good. I drew a breath through the respirator. Sigh nothing. Atlas entered first, low, fast, I followed. The inside of the house looked almost normal. That was the cruel part. Family pictures, kitchen table, my mother's chair. The clock above the sink, everything still in place. But smoke was gathering near the ceiling. A house can look alive when it is already lost. Silas, a sound came from the pantry, 3 knocks, then 2. Atlas ran toward it, Horf. The pantry door was blocked from inside by something heavy. I pushed. Silas, a voice answered, weak. Caleb, move away from the door. I cannot why. Leg, of course. I looked around. The wall beside the pantry had a narrow section between studs. I grabbed a fireplace poker from the kitchen, drove it into the drywall. Again, the wall broke. Heat and dust filled the room. Atlas barked. I kicked the opening wider. Behind it was not the pantry. It was a stairwell, hidden, narrow steps descending under the house. A man's face appeared below. Old white beard, blood along one side of his forehead. Silas Creed. I knew him immediately, not because I had met him, because I had seen him in photographs. Only the photographs had never shown him old. He looked up at me, then at Atlas. Something changed in his eyes. Mercy. What? He ignored me. The dog's ears lifted. Silas began crying, not loudly, no collapse, just tears cutting 2 lines through the soot on his face. Come here, boy. Atlas went down 2 steps, stopped, watched him. Silas reached out, his fingers trembled. Atlas leaned forward and touched his nose to the old man's hand. Silas closed his eyes. I thought I would never see one of them again. I looked at the dog, then at Silas. You can explain that outside. He almost laughed. That sounds like Evelyn. Can you stand? No. Down. Leg was pinned beneath a collapsed shelving unit. There were boxes everywhere, files, metal cases, old radio equipment. A small lamp ran off emergency power. The storm room Ellis had mentioned was not a storm room. It was an archive. Another one. My mother had hidden records under her own house. I tried to lift the shelving, too heavy. Silas pointed toward the corner. Jack. There was a hydraulic bottle jack beneath a workbench. I dragged it over, set it under the frame, pumped. Metallus pulled. His leg came free, he shouted once. Atlas moved closer. I checked the injury. No obvious open fracture. Bad swelling near the ankle. Could be broken, could be worse. Either way, he was not walking out alone. I put his arm over my shoulder. Ready? No, good. We stood. He nearly blacked out. Stay hell with me. I am too old for dramatic rescues. Then make this easier. He laughed once. That cost him. We moved toward the stairs. Then Silas stopped. The case. No, Caleb, no. He looked toward a steel box under the desk. Daniel died protecting it, and I am not going to. You do not understand. You can tell me outside. Not all of it. Smoke began entering through the upper stairwell. We did not have time for this. I lowered him onto the step. 1 minute. I grabbed the steel case, heavy, not impossible. No cuff, no lock visible. I slung it against my back beneath the fire shelter pack. Silas stared at me. That will slow you, I noticed. Leave me. No, Caleb, no. He studied me for a moment. Then something like sadness crossed his face. You really are hers. I did not ask who he meant. Not yet. We reached the kitchen. The smoke layer had dropped. Atlas stayed low. We moved toward the front door. Then a burning branch crashed through the porch roof. Flame rolled across the entrance. Silas pulled back. Back. I turned us toward the rear hall. Kitchen exit? Blocked. Bedroom window? Too small. He pointed toward my mother's room. Closet. I looked at him. Why? Tunnel. Of course there was another tunnel. At this point, my mother could have a submarine under the house, and I would not have been surprised. We reached the bedroom. The red wool coat box was gone. Gavin had taken it. The closet looked empty. Silas leaned against the wall and kicked the baseboard with his good foot. A panel released. Cold air came through. Old cistern. Exit orchard. I opened the panel wider. A crawl space. Too tight for me to carry him normally. Atlas went first. I pulled Silas onto a blanket, found an old length of rope. Wrapped it around the corners. Do not complain. I was going to suggest dignity. You lost that when you built a tunnel under a closet. I did not build it, my Mara. I stopped. Silas looked at me. The fire cracked overhead. What did you say? Mara built half the emergency routes in this basin. You told people she disappeared. She did. Then how did she build this? Before, Atlas barked from the tunnel. Move later. That word again. I tied off the blanket, dragged Silas through the crawl space. Every foot felt slower than the last. Smoke followed. The tunnel narrowed. My shoulders scraped earth. The steel case banged against my spine. Atlas waded ahead, eyes reflecting red in the light from my headlamp. At one point, the ceiling dropped so low I had to turn sideways. Silas whispered behind me. Caleb, if the house goes, there is a gas line near the pantry. Why are you telling me this now? Motivation. I pulled harder. The tunnel ended at a timber panel. I kicked it once. Twice it opened into darkness, cool, damp air, a cistern chamber. Old concrete basin, dry now. A ladder led upward to a steel hatch. Atlas climbed first. I opened the hatch. We emerged in the orchard behind the house. The sky had turned almost black. Fire surrounded the western side of the property. The house still stood, but flames had entered the roof. We had minutes, maybe less. I pulled Silas out. He collapsed against an apple tree. Atlas circled us. I keyed the radio. Ellis, no answer. Static, then go. Silas is alive. A long exhale. Copy, we are behind the orchard. Can you reach Eastern Creek bed? Maybe. Do it now. Why? Wind is changing. My stomach tightened. Direction. West. That meant fire would push directly across the ranch toward us. How long? Minutes. Extraction. No vehicle can reach you. Silas laughed weakly. Good news? I ignored him. Ellis, creek bed north or south? North. There is a rock cut about half a mile. I remember it. Reach that, and then we improvise. I released the radio. Silas looked at me. You always this cheerful? Only around family. His face changed. Maybe pain, Caleb. Not now. You need to know something before we move. No. Your mother did not call me because she was dying. That stopped me. The fire roared behind the house. I stared at him. Then why? Because she learned somebody had found Mara. My heartbeat changed. You said nobody knew where Mara was. We did not. Who found her? Silas looked toward the burning ridge. The same people who sent Jonah Pierce. Who are they? A company called Meridian Field Systems now. It had another name before. What name? North Star Environmental Research. The name meant nothing to me. For who? Anyone who paid. I glanced toward the fire. Vale fired. North Star ran the test. What test? He closed his eyes for 1 second. Wildland fire spread under manipulated wind conditions. I stared at him. They started the fire. Yes, on purpose. Yes, and lost control. Silas shook his head. That is the part they wrote into the official version. What is the real part? He looked at me. They did not lose control. The words took a second to settle. They wanted it to spread? They wanted to know how fast they could force an evacuation corridor to collapse. I felt something cold move through me, with people still inside. 23 died. Why? They said the zone had been cleared. You believe that? No. Then why were you working with them? He looked away. There it was, the thing he had been carrying. Not a secret, a sentence. I designed part of the ignition network. The fire behind us suddenly sounded farther away. Not because it was. Because everything inside me went silent. You started it. Silas did not answer. I stepped closer. You started the Vale fire. I helped build the system. That is not what I asked. His eyes met mine. Yes. My hands closed. Atlas moved between us. Not protecting Silas. Interrupting me. He knew. He always knew. I looked at the old man. 23 people. A whole basin burned. Mara disappeared. Daniel died. My mother spent decades hiding me. And Silas Creed had been part of the cause. You watched me my whole life. Yes. Why? Because I owed you. You owed me. My voice rose. You think watching from a distance pays for this? No. You arranged Atlas? Yes. Why? Because I could not come near you. Why? Evelyn would not allow it. I laughed once. There was no humor in it. So you gave me a dog. I made sure a bloodline reached you. That makes it better? No. Then stop explaining like it does. He looked at Atlas. His great-granddam belonged to Mara. I froze. Silas continued. She raised shepherds for mountain search work before North Star came to the basin. One of those dogs found the first relay route. Another led Daniel out during the fire. I looked down at Atlas. His chest rose and fell rapidly. Ash clung to his coat. Silas said, Evelyn believed dogs remembered what people tried to bury. That is sentimental nonsense, probably. Then why did Atlas know East Relay? Because he had been there. I stared at him. No. Once. When? Before he was placed with you, my anger came back. Who brought him? I did. You took my dog to a hidden station years before I returned. Yes. Why? Training. For what? To find the routes. I looked at Atlas, everything he had done, the irrigation road, the buried hatch, the second access, the blue door. Not prophecy, not miracle, memory, scent. Silas had taught him. My mother had known. I did not know whether that made the truth easier or worse. A burning piece of roof collapsed behind the house. Atlas barked. We had stayed too long. I put Silas's arm over my shoulder again. Move, he winced. What about the case? I have it. Good. We went north. The orchard ended at a pasture. Fire had already entered the grass on the west side. We stayed low in a drainage ditch. Silas could barely use his left leg. Every 20 yards we stopped, not because I wanted to. Because he physically could not continue. Atlas ran ahead and came back. Again, checking the route. The creek bed was another quarter-mile. The wind hit us hard from behind, hot. That was the warning. Then embers began falling. Dozens, hundreds. They bounced across the ground. Small fires started ahead of us. Faster, Silas tried. His leg folded. We went down. I hauled him up. He shoved me away. Leave me. No, you cannot carry me in that case. Watch me, Caleb. I grabbed his jacket. Do not make me listen to one more old man tell me his death is more useful than his life. He stared at me. Then something softened. Daniel said that. What? Night of the fire. Silas looked past me. He came back for me. Your brother, my friend. Mine, yes. The correction hurt him. He found me near the North Service Road. I told him to leave me. He said almost the same thing you just did. I swallowed. What happened? We got out. Then how did he die? Silas's face collapsed slightly, years later, not in the fire. Another assumption gone. How? Silas looked at the steel case. Because he tried to release what was inside. I tightened my grip. Meridian killed him? North Star. When? 29 years ago. And you did nothing. I ran. The word was simple. Ugly. Real. I ran for almost 3 decades. I looked at him. At the old man who had apparently shaped half my life from the shadows. Then I looked toward the fire. Then today you stopped. We moved. The creek bed appeared through the smoke. Granite walls, dry gravel, sparse vegetation. Better than open pasture. Not safe, better. We dropped into it. The roar changed immediately. Stone blocked some wind. Atlas ran north, then stopped. He barked twice. I followed. The creek narrowed at the rock cut Ellis had mentioned. A steep wall on either side. At the far end was an old culvert. Too small for vehicles, large enough for people. I keyed the radio. Ellis at the cut, static. No reply. Ellis, nothing. Silas leaned against the rock. We keep north. I shook my head. Fire may be ahead. Same problem. He laughed weakly. Excellent terrain. Atlas suddenly turned south. Growled. Not at fire. At something moving. Headlights appeared through the smoke above the creek. A vehicle, black, no emergency markings. It stopped on the ridge. 2 doors opened. Silas went pale. Meridian. I pulled him deeper into the shadow of the cut. How do you know? Because they found me at the ranch. How many? At least 2. Atlas lowered his body. I touched his collar. Stay. One of the men called down, Mr. Creed. Silas closed his eyes. The voice came again. We only want the case. I almost laughed. Everybody only wanted the case, I shouted back. Then you came to the wrong fire. A pause. Caleb Rowan? They knew me. Of course they did. We do not have a problem with you. That makes one of us. Silas whispered, do not engage. I am not planning a debate. The man above called again. Give us peace and walk north. Why? Because in 5 minutes this drainage will become a chimney. I looked at Silas. He nodded. They are right. That annoyed me more than it should have. The man continued. You cannot outrun what is coming. I looked at Atlas, then the culvert. The old concrete pipe ran beneath the rock cut. I crawled to the opening. Cool air, movement, airflow. Where does this go? Silas looked. Old irrigation tunnel. How far? Maybe 600 feet. North slope. Why did you not mention it? I am injured, not omniscient. The men above started moving down. I pulled the steel case off my back. Silas looked at me. What are you doing? Changing what they think matters. I opened my empty fire shelter bag, put several rocks inside, wrapped it tight, then handed the real case to Silas. Can you carry it? Barely. Good enough. I put the decoy bag across my back. Atlas watched me. Inside, he entered the culvert. Silas crawled after him. I waited. The first Meridian man reached the creek bed. Dark tactical clothing, respirator, no visible insignia. Weapon held low, not fire, not lost, case. I pointed toward my back. Come get it. He took another step. The second man appeared behind him. I backed toward the culvert. The first man raised his weapon. Stop. I stopped. For 1 second, then threw the decoy bag into the fire burning along the creek edge. Both men looked. Reflex. That was enough. I went into the culvert. A shot struck concrete behind me. Atlas barked ahead. Move, Silas crawled. I pushed his boots when he slowed. The pipe was barely 4 feet high. Smoke followed us. The sound of the men entered behind. They were coming. Then the world shook. A deep roar filled the pipe. Fire crossed the creek above. Pressure surged. Hot air pushed into the entrance behind us. The Meridian men shouted. One screamed. I did not look back. The pipe opened into an old irrigation chamber. Atlas jumped down. Silas fell after him. I caught part of his weight. The case hit the floor. Metal rang. I looked around. 2 tunnels, left and right, no markings. Atlas chose right. Of course you know he ran. We followed. The tunnel rose. My knees hurt, my lungs burned. Silas was fading. I grabbed his belt and hauled. Behind us came another sound, footsteps. One of the men had made it through. Silas heard it. Leave me, I almost laughed. Find new material. We reached a steel ladder. Atlas climbed a dirt slope beside it. At the top was a wooden hatch, locked. I shoved. Nothing. Again, nothing. Silas reached into his pocket. Brass key. Smaller than mine. He handed it to me. Every good tunnel needs an exit. I opened the lock. The hatch lifted. Night air, cold compared with the tunnel. We climbed out onto the north slope. And there, perhaps 50 yards away, sat an old Forest Service pickup. Engine running, driver door open. No driver. I stared. Silas stared too. That yours? No. Atlas ran toward it. Then stopped halfway. His tail moved. A figure stepped out from behind the truck. Small, wrapped in a gray coat, white hair, a rifle held low in both hands. Woman, old, maybe late 70s, maybe 80. Silas stopped breathing. Literally, his body went rigid against me. The woman looked at him. Then at Atlas, then at me. Her eyes were the first thing I noticed. Not because of the color, because I had seen them before. In a photograph, young woman, dark hair, baby in her arms. Mara Vale, Silas whispered her name. Mara, the woman did not answer him. She looked directly at me. For nearly 50 years, people had been telling me she was dead. Missing, gone, unfindable, yet there she stood, alive. Watching me as if she had been waiting for this exact moment. I took one step forward. Are you Mara Vale? Her eyes filled with tears. She lowered the rifle. Then she said no. So Silas made a sound behind me. I looked from him back to the woman. She took another step closer. My name was Mara Vale. The wind carried ash between us. But that was before they took my son. My chest tightened. What son? Her eyes stayed on mine. Then she said the name. Caleb. For a moment the entire mountain disappeared. The fire, the smoke, Silas, the case, everything. I stared at her. No, she nodded slowly. Yes, I could barely force the words out. My mother was Evelyn Rowan. Evelyn was your mother in every way that mattered. That is not what I asked. Pain crossed her face. I know. Silas leaned heavily against the rock. Mara, we need to move. She looked at him. There was 48 years of anger in that one glance. You do not get to tell me what we need. A gunshot cracked from the tunnel hatch behind us. Wood splintered. The Meridian man had reached the exit. Mara raised her rifle. Atlas moved in front of me. Everything happened at once. The man emerged, weapon up. Mara fired. He fell back behind the hatch. Silas shouted. Truck, we moved. Mara opened the rear door. Atlas jumped in. I lifted Silas after him. The steel case went onto the floor. I climbed into the passenger seat. Mara got behind the wheel. For the first time, I was close enough to see her face clearly. Age, scars, a thin white line near her temple, and eyes that looked at me with something so painful I almost turned away. She drove fast. The truck bounced north over an old service track. Fire moved across the ridge behind us. I stared at her. She kept her eyes on the road. I could not wait anymore. Are you saying you gave birth to me? Yes. Then why did Mom's recording say you were not my mother? Mara's hands tightened around the wheel. Because Evelyn knew someone might find that tape. I stared at her. It was a false trail. Yes, for who? Meridian, North Star, whoever came after. Silas said from the back seat, Mara. She ignored him. I turned toward her. Daniel was my brother? No, another lie broken. I felt anger rise. Then who was Daniel? Mara's voice shook for the first time. Your father. I closed my eyes. Victor had said Daniel was my brother. The tape said he was not my father. Every person had given me a different truth. Mara continued. They built contradictions on purpose. If one archive was found, it would not expose the whole story. Why? Because one person knowing everything was too dangerous. I looked down at the steel case. Then what is inside? The part Daniel kept. Mara took a sharp turn. The names. Whose names? The men who approved the veil test. Silas said, and the payments. Mara glanced in the mirror. You should not have brought that out. Silas laughed weakly. Good to see you too. You were supposed to destroy your half. I could not. That weakness killed Daniel. Silas went silent. I looked at Mara. Why did they take me? Her jaw tightened. They did not. What Silas did? I turned toward the back. Silas did not defend himself. Mara continued. The night of the Vale fire, Daniel and I realized the test was not an accident. We had copied records. We planned to take you and leave. You were a family, yes. Then what happened? The fire moved early. Silas closed his eyes. Mara's voice hardened. Because someone changed the ignition schedule. I looked back at him. Silas shook his head. Not me. Mara said he did not know. Who changed it? She stared at the road. Victor Harlan. My stomach dropped. Victor, the man we had rescued. The man carrying the other case. Silas whispered. We never proved it. Mara's face twisted. I saw him. The truck entered a narrow stand of pine. Smoke thickened. She continued. Victor activated the eastern line early. Daniel and I were trapped near the relay. Silas reached us. I looked at Silas. Mara said Daniel gave him the records. I gave him you. My throat tightened. You gave me to Silas? For 10 minutes she swallowed. I told him to take you to Evelyn. What happened to you? North Star caught me before I reached the second route. The truck went silent except for the engine. They took you. Yes, for how long? Mara did not answer immediately. 11 years. My chest felt hollow. 11. I escaped twice. What did they want? The location of Daniel's records. And me? Her eyes moved toward me. They believed Daniel had hidden a copy with you. I was a baby. They did not know where he had put it. What copy? Mara looked at Atlas, then back at the road. Not paper. Sat up despite the pain. Mara. She ignored him. What did he hide with me? She finally said it. A key. I touched the brass key in my pocket. East relay? No, then what? Her answer was almost a whisper. The key to the original North Star archive. Silas swore under his breath. You knew. I suspected. Mara nodded toward the brass key. That key does not only open East relay. I pulled it out. Old brass, square teeth relay stamped into the tag. What else? Mara looked at me. Vault 9. The name meant nothing, but Silas's face told me it should. What is Vault 9? He answered. The place North Star stored unedited field data. Where? Mara, beyond the trees. The land dropped toward Juniper Basin. Smoke covered everything. Then I understood. No. She nodded. Under the old county hospital. I remembered the building. Abandoned for more than 20 years. Concrete basement. East side of town. Why there? Because North Star funded the hospital. My mind connected pieces. Weather, emergency response, medical data, fire behavior, residents, human beings turned into measurements. What is in Vault 9? Mara's voice became colder. Everything they thought nobody would survive long enough to find. The radio on the dashboard crackled. Yes, Mara, respond. She grabbed the microphone. Go. He did not react to hearing her voice. He already knew she was alive. Another Depetsfin. Where are you? North Service Track. You have Caleb? She looked at me. Yes. Unfortunately, Silas muttered something. Ellis continued. You need to reach town. Why? Victor Harlan is gone. I turned. What do you mean gone? Ellis heard me. He disappeared during medical transfer. How? His ambulance stopped near Quarry Road. Driver found unconscious. Victor and the case are missing. Mara swore. Silas leaned forward. He is going to Vault 9. I looked at the brass key. If he needs this, why? Mara shook her head. He does not need the key to destroy the vault. The meaning came immediately. Fire. The whole basin was burning. If North Star's original archive still existed beneath an abandoned building, tonight was the perfect night to erase it permanently. Ellis came over the radio again. County Hospital just reported smoke from the lower level. I looked at Mara. How far? 10 minutes, Silas said. Too late. Atlas stood behind me. His ears came forward. I looked down at the key, then at the steel case, then through the windshield at the burning town beyond the trees. All day I had believed I was chasing the truth about who I was, but that was no longer the biggest question, not even close. If Mara was telling the truth, there was a vault beneath Juniper Basin holding evidence that 23 people had been turned into data points almost 50 years ago. Victor Harlan was heading there, and the fire was already inside. Mara accelerated. Atlas braced himself between the seats. Silas looked at me. You wanted the truth. I turned toward the smoke rising above town. Yeah, he tightened his grip on the steel case. Then understand something before we get there. What? Once Vault 9 opens, this stops being a family secret. The abandoned county hospital appeared through the smoke. One lower window glowed orange. Silas finished the sentence. It becomes a crime scene. The abandoned county hospital looked dead from the outside. Then one basement window shattered. Flame pushed through it like something breathing. Mara did not slow. The Forest Service truck crossed the parking lot hard enough to throw Atlas against my shoulder. I caught him. Silas grabbed the dashboard with one hand and the steel case with the other. East entrance, he said. Mara shook her head. Blocked. Loading bay, too exposed. I looked at the building. 2 stories, concrete, flat roof, most windows broken years ago. The county had closed it when I was still overseas. Mold, structural damage, asbestos. Everybody in Juniper Basin knew the place was useless. Apparently everybody had been wrong. Where is Vault 9? Basement, Mara said. How deep? Of course. I looked at her. How do we get in? She turned the truck behind the building and stopped beside a concrete retaining wall. Same way we got out 50 years ago. Silas gave her a look. You remember? She shut off the engine. I remember everything. That ended the conversation. We got out. The heat was worse here. Not because the whole hospital was burning, because fire had entered through the western basement and was pulling air through the building. A structure fire breathes. Every hallway can become a throat. Every doorway can become a weapon. Atlas stayed beside me. His coat was dusty with ash. His eyes were clear, focused. Still ready, I crouched and put a hand against his neck. You have done enough. He stared at me, that expression again. The one that said I was wasting words. Mara moved toward the retaining wall. Behind a curtain of dead vines was a steel access panel about waist high. She pulled, locked. I took out the brass key. She looked at me. Try it. The key turned. Silas whispered. Daniel was right. I opened the panel. A narrow maintenance tunnel disappeared beneath the hospital. Cool air came out, but cooler. Atlas first. He entered. Mara followed. I helped Silas through. Then I went last. The tunnel was narrower than East Relay. Concrete walls. Rusting pipes overhead. Old electrical conduit. My headlamp caught arrows painted near the floor, not hospital markings. North Star, a faded symbol, appeared every 30 feet. A circle divided by 3 lines. Mara saw me looking. That was theirs. Why hide a research facility beneath a county hospital? They did not hide the hospital around the facility. She kept moving. They built the hospital because of the facility. That stopped me for half a step, for experiments. Observation of what people? Silas answered behind me. Stress, I looked back. He continued. Smoke exposure. Evacuation behavior. Response times. Treatment delay. My jaw tightened. They used a town as a laboratory. Mara said, not at first. What does that mean? It started with weather. Silas breathed hard as he limped. Then fire behavior. Mara continued. Then somebody discovered human response was more valuable. We reached a metal ladder. Atlas waited above. Smoke drifted down through the opening. Mara climbed first. I pushed Silas from below. At the top was a utility corridor. Emergency lights flickered red along the walls. Somehow the building still had partial power. Probably a generator. Probably another system nobody knew existed. We moved east. The smoke layer was thin for now. Mara pointed toward a stairwell. Vault access below. Silas shook his head. If Victor is already inside, he will have disabled the suppression system. How do you know? Because that is what I would do. Mara looked at him. I remember. There was no forgiveness in her voice. Only history. We descended. The basement was hotter. Smoke thicker. Atlas slowed. His nose worked constantly. Then he stopped beside a door, growled. I raised one hand. Mara froze. Silas leaned against the wall. I listened. Movement. One person, maybe 2, a metallic scrape. I stepped closer to the door. Atlas looked at the lower edge. Then at me. Someone was on the other side. I motioned Mara and Silas back. Opened the door fast. A man came through with a fire axe raised. I caught the handle with both hands. Twisted. His shoulder hit the wall. Atlas barked. The man froze. Do not. He dropped the axe. I shoved him against the concrete. He was not Meridian. He wore county maintenance clothes. Smoke mask hanging around his neck. Who are you? Ben what? Ben Holcomb. What are you doing here? He coughed, trying to turn the pumps on. What pumps? Basement suppression. Silas stepped forward. Victor shut them down. Ben stared at him. Unfortunately. Ben nodded. He came through 15 minutes ago. Said he was federal. Mara laughed once. He has been saying that since 1978. Ben looked at her, then at me. What is happening? How many people in the building? Just me, you sure? I was doing a fire inspection when alarms triggered. Why inspect an abandoned hospital? He looked embarrassed. County was planning demolition. That made sense. The building was scheduled to disappear. Maybe Victor knew. Maybe that was why tonight mattered. Can you restore suppression? Ben shook his head. He cut the main valve and damaged the pump controller. Manual bypass. He pointed down the corridor. Mechanical room. Can you do it? If the feed pipe is intact, go. He stared at Atlas. Then Silas. Who are you people? Bad night for questions. He ran. Atlas watched him, then turned toward the opposite corridor. Mara said, vault. We moved. The hallway ended at 2 steel doors. One had been forced open. The other stood untouched. Above the forced door was a faded sign. Medical storage. Inside, shelves had collapsed. Boxes burned. A section of wall had been removed. Behind it stood another door. Thick blue, no handle, only a keyway. Vault 9. The brass key fit. I looked at Mara. She nodded. I turned it. Nothing. Then Silas reached around me and pressed 3 metal points beside the frame. A hidden panel opened. Old sequence. How do you remember? I designed it. Mara's face tightened. Silas did not look at her. He pressed 2 switches. The door released. A rush of cold, dry air came out. The vault was climate-controlled, still working after almost 50 years. Inside were rows of metal cabinets, film canisters, data tapes, paper records sealed in plastic maps, photographs, audio reels, and along the back wall a bank of storage drawers with names. Not project numbers, names, human names. I stepped inside. Atlas followed. Mara stopped at the threshold. She looked physically sick. Silas whispered, we found it. Mara looked at him. No, her voice broke. They never lost it. That was worse. Somebody had maintained this room. Somebody had kept power going. Somebody had decided these records still mattered. I walked to the nearest cabinet. Veil fire. I opened it. Inside were folders, wind calculations, ignition maps, medical observations, evacuation charts. One document had a list of households. Next to every family name were codes, age, mobility, vehicle access, medical condition, expected evacuation time. I stared at the page. These were not victims recorded after a disaster. They were variables recorded before it. My voice came out lower than I expected. They knew who was here. Silas nodded. Marissa said nothing. They knew there were children. Yes. Older people. Yes. People without vehicles. Silas closed his eyes. Yes. Something in me broke loose. Not rage. Something colder. A line inside my mind. The kind that appears when an act is so deliberate that anger becomes too small for it. I opened another folder. Project Crosswind. Objective. Measure evacuation collapse under simultaneous ignition points during high wind. I stopped reading. That was enough. 23 dead. Not from a wildfire, from a test. Mara walked to a drawer at the back. Her hand trembled before she touched it. Mara Vale. She opened it. Photographs, surveillance, medical charts. 11 years, every year recorded. Weight, blood pressure. Pregnancies, injuries, interrogation notes, escape attempts. I saw her face change, not surprise, recognition. She had lived it. But there is something different about seeing your suffering filed neatly by strangers. Mara reached into the drawer, pulled out one photograph. Young, thin, bruised, standing against a wall with measurement marks behind her. I looked away. She did not. They documented everything. Silas stood beside her. Do not. I am sorry. She turned on him. Do not spend another word on sorry. He accepted that. She put the photograph back. Then Atlas barked. One sharp warning. Footsteps. Slow. A man appeared in the vault doorway. Victor Harlan. His face was gray with smoke, one sleeve torn. The medical restraint was gone. So was the metal case. He held a pistol, not aimed yet, just ready. Step away from the cabinets. I moved in front of Mara. Atlas came beside me. Victor looked at him. Still alive. Disappointed, impressed. Silas leaned against a cabinet. Victor smiled. Safe. With Meridian. No, that surprised Silas. Victor looked at me. Give me your key. No. You already opened the vault. Then you do not need it. I do if I want to seal it. Mara laughed. You mean burn it? Victor looked at her. For the first time his face changed. Mara, she stepped around me. Say it again. He did not. Say my name, Mara. She moved closer. You left me underground for 11 years. Victor's jaw tightened. I did not make that decision. You changed the ignition schedule. Orders 23 people. Orders my husband. Orders my child. Victor's eyes moved toward me. That was his mistake. Mara raised the rifle. I caught the barrel before she fired. She turned on me. Let go. No, he deserves it. Maybe, her voice cracked. Do you know what they did to me? No, then do not tell me what justice looks like. I am not. Then move. Victor remained still, pistol low. Watching, I kept my hand on Mara's rifle. If you shoot him, he dies knowing the truth dies with him. She stared at me. I continued. If he walks out alive, he has to hear people say their names. Her eyes filled, all 23. Victor's expression changed slightly. I looked at him. He has to sit in a room while families ask why. Silas said quietly. I ignored him. He has to watch this become public. Mara's breathing slowed. I lowered her rifle. Death is quiet. I looked at Victor. He does not get quiet. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Victor lifted his pistol. Atlas growled. Victor aimed at the cabinets. Not us. You think there will be a trial. I stepped forward. Put it down. You think Meridian will let any of this leave? Put it down. You still do not understand what this is. Then explain it with your hands empty. He smiled sadly. Daniel said the same thing. Mara froze. What? Victor looked at her. The night he died. Silas straightened. You killed him. Victor shook his head. No, do not lie. I did not kill Daniel. Mara raised the rifle again. Who did? Victor looked at Silas. The vault went silent. Silas did not move. Mara slowly turned. No, Silas's face collapsed. Mara, no, I did not mean to. She stared at him. Victor continued. Daniel came to release the records. Silas tried to stop him. Shut up, Silas said. Victor ignored him. They fought. Mara's rifle moved toward Silas. My body reacted before my mind did. I stepped between them. Silas, he looked at me. No denial. That told me enough. What happened? He swallowed. We were in a car. When? 29 years ago. Daniel had the records, copies. He wanted to go public. And you stopped him. I tried. Why? Because Meridian had found Mara again. Mara's face changed. You knew? Silas looked at her. I knew they had a lead. You knew where I was, no? But you knew I was alive. Maybe. Her voice became a whisper. You let me believe Daniel abandoned me. Silas closed his eyes. I thought if he went public, they would kill you. And instead, Silas looked at the floor. We argued while I was driving. I knew the rest before he said it. The car left the road. Daniel died and you lived. Yes, Mara lowered the rifle. Not because she forgave him. Because the truth had taken the strength out of her. Silas sat down against a cabinet. I have heard the sound every night for 29 years. I looked at him. That is why you ran. Yes, not Meridian. Both. Victor laughed softly. Everybody in this room has spent half a century blaming the wrong person. I looked at him. Not everybody. His smile faded. You lit the Eastern Line. Yes. Why? Because North Star ordered it. You could have refused. I was 26, so were people who died. He looked away. It was not an excuse, a fact that did not help him. Atlas suddenly turned toward the hall. Smoke was thickening. Then the lights went out. Emergency lamps came on. Red. Ben's voice echoed from somewhere outside. Suppression is dead. A second later, an explosion shook the basement. One of the vault shelves tipped. Atlas moved fast. He hit me hard at the hip. I stumbled sideways. A steel cabinet crashed exactly where I had been standing. Atlas. He disappeared beneath it. My heart stopped. I dropped. Nothing. Smoke entered the vault. Mara grabbed one side of the cabinet. I grabbed the other. Silas tried to stand, his injured leg folded. Victor stared. Help us. He did not move. I looked at him. You wanted the records? Victor looked at Atlas beneath the metal. Then help save the dog, keeping you alive long enough to reach them. Something changed. He holstered the pistol, came over. 3 of us lifted. The cabinet barely moved. Atlas made one sound. Low. My vision narrowed. Not here. Not him again. We lifted higher. Atlas crawled. His back legs came free. Mara pulled him clear. We dropped the cabinet. I went to him. Blood along his right side. Not much, but his rear leg dragged. Atlas. He tried to stand, failed. My chest tightened. He looked at me. Same eyes. Same certainty. Still here. I ran my hands along his spine. Hip, leg. No obvious break. Maybe severe bruising. Maybe nerve injury. I did not know. And I did not have time to find out. The vault ceiling cracked. Fire had entered the floor above. Ben appeared in the doorway. We have to leave. I looked at the records. Rows. Decades. Thousands of pages. We could not carry everything. Mara understood. Take the central index. Silas pointed. Cabinet 3. Victor shook his head. Digital tape. Power will fail. We moved. Mara grabbed folders. Silas pulled a metal index drawer. Victor took 2 data cases. I lifted Atlas. He weighed more than 80 pounds. My back protested immediately. I carried him anyway. His head rested against my shoulder. Stay with me. His tongue touched my neck once. We left Vault 9. Fire had entered the basement corridor. Ben led us toward the mechanical exit. Smoke reduced the world to a few feet. Mara carried records under one arm and her rifle under the other. Victor carried the cases. Silas limped, then stopped. My leg I turned. He was done, physically done. Give me Atlas, Mara said. No, Caleb, I have him. You cannot carry both. She was right. I hated that. I looked at Victor. He knew before I spoke. No. Victor laughed once. You are serious. Yes, he would have left me to die. Silas looked at him. Probably. I stepped closer to Victor, then decide what kind of man walks out of this building. Victor stared at me. Behind us, flame rolled across the ceiling. He cursed, then put Silas's arm over his shoulder. Move. That was the last thing I expected from him. We moved. The mechanical room exit was blocked by fallen ductwork. Ben tried to lift it too heavy. Mara looked around. Other route. Ben shook stairwell. Fire. No. Atlas stirred in my arms, then lifted his head. He sniffed. Once. Again he looked toward a laundry chute opening along the wall. I almost laughed. Of course, Ed. What? Where does that go? Exit. Loading dock. Open? Maybe. Atlas looked at me. I trusted him. We entered. Low concrete corridor, just high enough to crouch. Mara first, then Ben, Victor dragging Silas, me carrying Atlas. Behind us the basement roared. Halfway through Silas fell. Victor fell with him. The data cases slid away. Firelight appeared behind us. Leave the cases, I shouted. Victor looked at them. Then at Silas. For 1 second I saw the decision. Evidence or man. He left the cases, grabbed Silas. Pulled. Something about that mattered. Maybe not enough. But something. We reached the loading dock. Ben kicked the exterior door. It opened. Night air hit us. Cold, smoky, beautiful. We came out behind the hospital as flame broke through the second-floor windows. Ellis's brush truck appeared through the parking lot. 2 ambulances behind it. Firefighters jumped out. Hands took Atlas from me. I almost refused. Then training returned. Let people do their jobs. A medic put Atlas onto a blanket. I stayed beside him. Caleb. Mara touched my shoulder. I did not look up. Caleb. Atlas opened his eyes. His breathing was steady. The medic ran both hands along his leg. Possible hip injury. I do not feel an open fracture. Can you transport him? We have a veterinary emergency unit coming from Redmond. That was enough. I pressed my forehead against Atlas's head. You did good. His tail moved once. That was all. Behind us the hospital burned, but Mara still had the paper index. Ben had 1 data cartridge stuffed inside his jacket, and Silas had managed to keep the steel case from East Relay. Not everything survived. Enough did. Victor stood near an ambulance. Hands visible. Ellis walked toward him with the county deputy. Victor looked at me. I expected him to run. He did not. The deputy handcuffed him. Victor did not resist. Before they moved him, he said, Caleb. I stood. What? You were right. About what? He looked at the burning hospital. Quiet would have been easier. Then they took him away. The fire burned through the night. By dawn, Juniper Basin looked like another planet. Black ridges, white smoke, trees stripped to poles. The western barns were gone, several homes too. Juniper House survived. Every resident we moved through East Relay survived. Dorothy complained about hospital coffee before breakfast. I considered that excellent news. Gavin was waiting near the evacuation center when I arrived. Renee stood 10 feet away from him. That distance told me enough about their marriage. He looked at the bandage around my arm, then at Atlas, who lay on a padded veterinary stretcher beside me. Is he going to be okay? The veterinarian thinks so. Good. I waited. Gavin stared at the floor. The ranch house? Gone. His face tightened. My father built part of that place. My mother kept it alive. He nodded. No argument. Then he handed me a folder. The trust documents. The transfer was legal. I said nothing, but the sale is not. I looked at him. I canceled it. Why? He swallowed. Because I was wrong. I almost laughed. That sentence had become popular lately. He continued. I was angry that Evelyn always compared me to you. She did not. She did know. You compared yourself to me. That landed. He looked away. I thought if I owned the ranch, I finally owned something you did not. I glanced toward Atlas. How did that work out? A faint, sad smile appeared. Not great. I took the folder. I do not know what happens between us. I know. I do not forgive you because the fire changed the weather. I know. But Renee helped 11 people get through that tunnel. He nodded. She did, and you helped too. He looked surprised. I continued. That does not erase what you did, no. But people are more than their worst decision if they stop making it. His eyes filled. I left before he could answer. Some conversations do not need a clean ending. The investigation began before the smoke cleared. State police, federal investigators, county officials, attorneys, archivists, people with gloves carrying boxes from a half-burned building. The paper index from Vault 9 identified enough records to obtain warrants. The East Relay files connected names. The steel case connected payments. Ben's surviving data cartridge contained copies of experimental logs. Victor talked. Maybe guilt finally got heavy. Maybe prison frightened him. Maybe carrying Silas out of the hospital reminded him that he was still capable of choosing something. I never asked. Silas testified too. He admitted his role. Every part, the ignition design, the cover-up, Daniel's death, the years of silence. He did not ask for sympathy. Mara gave none. Neither did I, but I visited him once before the hearing. Atlas came with me. His rear leg had recovered enough for short walks, though the veterinarian said he might always carry a slight stiffness after long days. Silas sat across from me. He looked older than he had in the fire. How is he? Silas smiled. Good line. I looked at Atlas. Tell me why him. Understood. Why Atlas? Yes. He folded his hands. Mara's first shepherd was named Mercy. I remembered the ranch, Silas seeing Atlas, Mercy. It was Mercy who found East Relay during the original project. He continued. After the Vale fire, one of her pups survived. I kept the line going quietly. Why at first? Yes, because it was the last thing Mara had left behind. Mara had not been dead, but he had believed she was gone. Years later, Evelyn told me you had gone into the Navy. I waited. Then she told me you were struggling after one deployment. My jaw tightened. She should not have known that. She was your mother. She knew Fairpoint. Silas looked at Atlas. I found out one of Mercy's descendants had entered a military working dog program. Atlas, you manipulated the placement, yes. How? A few phone calls, a donation, a recommendation from someone who owed me a favor. I stared at him. That could have gone badly, yes. You had no right, no. Do you regret it? He looked at Atlas. No. That answer should have angered me. It did not. Maybe because Atlas was leaning against my boot. Silas continued. Evelyn made me promise never to tell you. She said, if Atlas chose you after retirement, then one day he might bring you home the way Mercy once brought Daniel home. I looked at him. That sounds like something she would say. She believed some things should not be forced. I thought about the first command Atlas refused. Load. He had not refused me because of destiny. He had recognized the ridge. Ascent. A route trained years earlier. But maybe facts and meaning do not have to fight each other. Maybe a dog can follow scent and still change a life. Maybe a person can make a choice and still feel guided by something larger. I stood. Silas looked up. Caleb, what? Do you hate me? I considered lying. Some days, he nodded. Fair. Some days I think you saved me. His eyes lifted. Other days I remember you helped start the fire that made saving me necessary. He looked down. Also fair. I do not know which version wins. Maybe neither. I looked at him. He said, maybe you do not owe me a final answer. That was the first wise thing he had said to me. I left. Mara did not disappear again. That mattered. She rented a small place outside town while the investigation continued. For the first few weeks, we did not know how to talk to each other.
How could we?
She was my biological mother. Evelyn was my mother. Both things were true. One did not have to destroy the other. Mara never asked me to call her mom. I was grateful for that. She told me stories instead. Daniel singing badly. Daniel fixing radios. Daniel carrying me around the kitchen at night because I would not sleep unless somebody kept moving. She showed me one photograph I had never seen. Daniel sitting on a porch. Me asleep against his chest, Mara beside him, Mercy lying at their feet. I stared at the dog, black and tan shepherd, white mark beneath one ear. Not exactly Atlas, close enough to hurt. Mara looked at him too. Mercy saved us more than once. Sounds familiar. Atlas lay beside my chair, his tail moved. Mara smiled. Some families keep silverware. I looked at him. Ours apparently keeps shepherds. That was the first time we laughed together. Spring came late. The ranch house was gone. I did not rebuild it. At first, people thought that meant I had lost. Gavin offered to transfer the land back to me. I told him to keep his legal share and put the disputed acreage into a community trust. He stared at me like I had lost my mind. Maybe I had. But I did not want the old house anymore. I wanted what the land could become. East Relay survived the fire, so did most of the Eastern Ridge. With county approval and money recovered during the North Star investigation, the old station became something it had never been allowed to become the first time. Public, we repaired the ventilation, reinforced the service tunnel, added medical supplies, emergency radios, water, blankets, wheelchair access, backup power, a real evacuation shelter. No hidden experiments, no secret list of names, no locked archive filled with suffering. Over the entrance, the county wanted a sign, the Rowan Emergency Shelter. I refused. Then they suggested Vale Memorial Station. Mara refused. Finally, Dorothy solved it. She was sitting in a folding chair during the dedication, wrapped in the same plaid blanket she had complained about during the fire. "Call it what it is," she said. Everybody looked at her. A second chance. So that is what went above the door. Second Chance Station. Atlas became unofficial security. Mostly he slept near the entrance, but every person who walked inside received an inspection. Children loved him. He pretended not to love them. Nobody believed him. One evening, months after the fire, I sat outside the station watching the sun drop behind the blackened western ridge. New green growth had begun between the burned trees. Small, almost invisible from a distance, but there. Mara sat beside me. Atlas lay between us. She looked toward the valley. "Do you ever wish Evelyn had told you sooner?" "Yes." She nodded. Then I said no. She looked at me. Both. I thought about it. I wish I had known her burden. Mara looked down. But if she had told me when I was younger, I might have spent my whole life chasing people who hurt us. And now I looked at Atlas. Now I know what is worth chasing. Mara smiled faintly. The evening cooled. Wind moved through the young grass. Atlas lifted his head, not alarmed, listening. I put my hand against the scar beneath his ear. For years I thought strength meant knowing where you were going. Then life took my mother, my home, my history, every answer I trusted. And the one creature who could not explain anything led me toward the truth one step at a time. Not because he understood secrets, not because he knew destiny, because he remembered a path. Maybe that is all any of us need sometimes. Not the whole answer. Not the entire map, just one faithful thing that remembers the way forward when we cannot. I had been thrown out of the only home I thought I had. But the fire taught me something I should have learned years earlier. A home is not the roof over your head. It is not a deed. It is not the name written beside yours on a family tree. Home is the place where someone refuses to leave you behind. Atlas looked at me. I scratched beneath his collar. You knew that before I did. His tail struck the ground once. The sun disappeared behind the ridge. For the first time in years, darkness did not feel like something closing in. It felt like rest, and when Atlas finally lowered his head across my boot, I understood the last thing my mother had been trying to teach me. Some doors close because somebody wants you gone. Others close because the road behind you has finished teaching you what it can. Either way, when the world tells you there is nothing left, pay attention to the one loyal soul still standing beside you. He may not know every answer, but sometimes he knows which way home is. Maybe the most important thing Caleb discovered was not who his biological parents were, who owned the ranch, or even who had hidden the truth. It was that family is sometimes revealed by the people, and the animals who stay when leaving would be easier. Life can take away a house, a title, a plan, or an answer we believed for decades. But losing the place we thought we belonged does not always mean we have lost our way. Sometimes the road ahead simply looks unfamiliar because we have never needed to walk it before. And sometimes a faithful companion sees that road before we do. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who understands what loyalty really means. And if you would like to hear more stories about veterans, German shepherds, second chances, and the quiet courage that can change an ordinary life, subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next story in our channel. Until then, take care of the people who stand beside you, Remember the ones who stood beside you before, and never underestimate the difference one loyal heart can make.